I know this podcast. I've recorded it 1,000 times. That's right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And welcome to the show where we wax poetic about the movies we see on a month-to-month basis. It's time to crack open our Movie Memoirs! All right. So, Dragon, it is the end of the summer officially, and the strikes are not looking good. We'll get into that. No good news to report on that front. But we still have some really solid movies to go over, and a couple clunkers, maybe, perhaps. So let's get things started. First of all, Dragon, just as a very quick aside. So, what do you see on Movie Theater Day? Or National Cinema Day, I should say.
I saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem.
Nice. I saw Blue Beetle and Gran Turismo. I was going to go see Strays as well, but my dad was out of town, and I didn't realize he was going to be out of town, so it got cut down from a triple feature to a double feature. But anyway, so yeah, that was a fun time. Hope to do it again. All right, so let's dive right into things with news. Of course, we always start with the deaths and in memoriams. And Dragon, holy shit! I think this year must be like this month must be like the worst one of the year so far, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, at least
it was like just coming from all directions.
At least one of the highest death tolls, I'll give you that.
All right, so let's start with character actor Ron Cephas Jones, of course, best known in our circles as Bobby Fish in the Marvel Netflix Luke Cage shows, and then also Romero in Mr. Robot. But I feel like this guy is just a very, very distinct character actor. You know what I mean? He has a vibe and he plays it really well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he just brought kind of a real salt of the earth respectability to him, which is what I loved about Bobby Fish and Luke Cage. Because remember, he did essentially fill the Pops role after Pops gets killed off in that show. You know, he's
sure.
It is kind of, I know you were going to full-heartedly just like agree with this, but, season 2 Luke Cage, when Bobby Fish goes, that's towards the top of that season, and it's like,
yeah.
So like it or not, it's like, we lose the mentor figure, we lose kind of like that, that fatherly, or at least very much kind of like the wizened figure in Luke Cage's life. And, things happen.
A couple other of his credits that are worth mentioning. I believe he played the school principal in Half Nelson. I could be wrong about that. That sounds familiar. That was Ryan Gosling's first big movie. And then also in Across the Universe. Do you remember Across the Universe, Dragon?
Not particularly.
It was the Julie Taymor Beatles musical.
All right.
He plays a Black Panther in that. Huh. So yeah, just a very, very prolific character actor. I think mostly TV stuff, it looks like, but looks like he was a voice in Amphibia. So just all around, just a very a very decorated career.
Also appeared in Venom.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So yeah, of course he will be missed. Just that like you said, Dragon, that air of distinction and respectability. All right, Johnny Hardwick. This guy, and this is kind of getting sad, Dragon, where we're to the point where multiple lead King of the Hill voice actors are no longer with us. Of course, the very untimely death of Brittany Murphy back in the day, and now we have Johnny Hardwick as well, voicing arguably a fan favorite character in Dale Gribble. I mean, I think Luke Hill is like the fan favorite character of that show, but I think that Dale is probably like solidly in the top 3.
I mean, I think Dale's probably it's a question where Bobby factors into things, but Dale's probably the runner-up, if not factoring Bobby. Probably is this. I don't know. It's pretty. you know, every time I think about it now, it's like, well, I mean, there's a lot of people like Bobby, and a lot of people really like, like Bill, I'm sure. So I don't know. So maybe.
Bill, I feel like Bill has some really good episodes, and he also has some really bad
Yeah,
episodes.
so by that logic, that's why I can't say for certain. But point being, people
Well,
like.
what I find fascinating about Dale as a character, and just it kind of speaks to Hardwick's performance of him, is that like on paper he should objectively be the least likable character in the main group, because he's just basically like a conspiracy theorist nut job. Like, I'm sure if the show was written nowadays, they'd lean way more into kind of like the political side of his character, and I'm glad that he wasn't written in that kind of climate. But what the show does really well is genuinely, like, as we peel back the layers to him and his life, the John Redcorn of it all, he is very much, like, I would say arguably an even more sympathetic character than Hank is.
But maybe sympathetic characters might be a little tough, but I don't know. But I think it's like Dale is being cheated on for the duration of the series, and he doesn't.
Well, I'm saying he's being cheated on. He's also being just like blatantly lied to about the whole Joseph thing, and it's like I've always found the Joseph thing to be endearing, because it's like he never even like questions it, just because he loves that kid. You know what I mean?
I mean, that you're right. That there's a very redeemable quality to Dale Gribble character. While he is dumb as a sack of hammers and a conspiracy nut, he does love his son very, very, very truly. And even though everyone and their mother can put together like, okay, that he is not that boy's father. So that's the thing. We've examined like moments where Nancy's like, someone's about like John Redcorn, or somebody's about like, like spill the beans, or Peggy Hill's about to spill the beans, and then she sees, oh man, we can't break his heart, and he's
right, yeah.
That's the thing.
Well, it's like the tightrope that Hardwick as a performer walked with that, I think, is really impressive.
For sure. Apparently, he'd been very active on YouTube in later years, in which he'd doing like readings as Dale and stuff. So he loved playing that character. And fun fact, apparently, I had no idea about this. Apparently, Daniel Stern originally was cast as Dale, and but he wanted too much money, so they went with a different comedian.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So apparently, he was able to record a few episodes of the revival for King of the Hill.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Yeah.
They said a few episodes. So I don't know if it was like Dale was in a reduced role.
I have a feeling we're just going to have to do a recasting.
I mean, possibly. I mean, otherwise, I don't know. It sounded like it might have just been Dale may have had a reduced role in this new season or not. I don't know, but because it would seem a little out of the ordinary if it was a reduced role. So I mean, I don't know. I wonder. I forget. I don't know what. I do not know how Hardwick died. I don't know if it's a thing where he was sick and maybe they factored it into the writing or not. I don't know. Anyway.
Let's see. Really quick, we have Code Gias in the comments. Happy to have you, man. He says Barbenheimer continued owning the box office while yet another DC film flopped. Yeah, indeed. It's kind of funny where it's like Blue Beetle technically took down Barbie in its 5th week. All right. Anyways, Hardwick, obviously, looking at his filmography, it really seems like Dale was pretty much the thing that he was known for. There's really not a lot else credit-wise, but I mean, talk about just owning an iconic character, though. He kind of reminds me of you're gonna fucking, I feel stupid for not remembering his name, but the voice actor for Squidward.
Roger Bumpus?
Yes. It kind of reminds me of that sort of like, he has one role and he just absolutely owns that role.
Oh, I think we've abandoned the blue, right?
What?
The banner. It's not blue.
Oh, no, you're right. We do need to change it to blue. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I will do that.
Anyway.
Okay.
So then we had a director pass this month, William Friedkin.
Yeah, which is very kind of weird timing considering the Exorcist reboot is coming out soon.
It's very trippy how that works. Yeah. So, of course, Friedkin was the director behind The Exorcist, and a number of films. I think the other most iconic film that he did is The French Connection.
Yeah, which you watched this month, so I'm excited to get your thoughts on that. I'm looking at his filmography right now to see if I've seen anything else besides The Exorcist. I mean, obviously, The Exorcist on its own is just like huge. But anyways, I can't really see anything. Sorry.
Well, also he did a few episodes of CSI in season 9, which was still the good seasons of CSI, the original one. So this is the point. This guy was like a guy who really loved directing. Like he would, if he had the opportunity to do something, and the guy was an artisan with the camera. I'm going to give him that. Man knew how to compose a shot very well, and as the Exorcist will show us, very memorably when we cover it for Haunted Holiday Hijinks this year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, plus the man was working till the end. He's going to have some posthumous releases and stuff. So he was, he was in it, man.
I remember Bug from back in the day. That was like a 2005 movie, I think, with actually Judd. That was him. I remember that.
Yeah. I think obviously it seemed like Freakin' just had a, he had kind of a sixth sense for, doing horror. It would feel like at the very least things are very, thriller to horror, I guess. Yeah. Really good attention too, which we'll get into. But yeah.
All right, and then definitely, without a doubt, the biggest one that kind of rocked our community was Arlene Sorkin. I mean, God, that was that was just a bullet, man. It's like Conroy and Sorkin, I believe, in the same calendar year.
Well, I mean, Conroy was technically, I believe, the tail end of last year, but yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying by calendar year is the same 12 months.
Oh, well, yeah, that's really bad, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, this one hurt. It's of course, she got her start as the Calliope Jones on Days of Our Lives, which essentially was like the little like foot in the door, like in a light bulb moment for let's just take that character, and make her Harley Quinn.
Right.
Arlene Sorkin's,
We have some clips of that.
it feels like Arlene Sorkin is one of those actresses who basically put herself in the role, and like it was like one of those things where she's like kind of like this delightful person, and they just wanted to put her in shows, and it's like we put her in this show, and then we're going to animate her in that show because essentially she is her character. She is Harley Quinn, only without the dramatic psychiatrist driven crazy by the Joker into being a hench girl. But it's personality wise and look wise, she's essentially Arlene Sorkin.
Mm-hmm.
She had this wonderful friendship with Paul Dini, which basically, when I think about Arlene Sorkin, look at her, when factoring everything is that Harley Quinn is a tribute to Arlene Sorkin, the person, and now she's this everlasting symbol of Batman the Animated Series because that character is created for that show. And, like Conroy, she embodied that character, only this one's like there is no like she's the definitive Harley Quinn. She was Harley Quinn in her DNA. That's the one thing she has over like Conroy and Hamill in terms of what they've done for their roles. She is that character.
Sure. I mean, I do think that Tara Strong. I'm sorry, not Taylor Strong. Jesus. Tara Strong, I do think has done a really, really great job kind of carrying the torch with the role. But you're right. I mean, it's like she is essentially doing Arlene Sorkin when she's doing that role.
Yeah. Which I mean, it's, how can you not? But yeah, I mean, you can count on. Look, you can count on one hand the amount of people in this life who have like done this thing where, the characters that they've embodied these characters to their core, and they've taken on attributes and aspects of these characters. Like you have Arlene Sorkin as Harley, which is pretty 1-to-1. You have Ryan Reynolds Deadpool. You have Christopher Reeve Superman. These are like the definitive. Like they kind of became these characters in life in the best of ways. Thankfully, Ryan Reynolds isn't killing people, but same. You get the idea. But it also, this is going to relate to some later stuff. Yeah, she suffered from MS. That's essentially what did her in, which is a horrible way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no idea why she retired. I wonder if the MS probably was one of the reasons why.
It's possible.
Yeah.
All right, and then finally we have, we have two more. Bob Barker. Yeah, man. Man lived to 99 years old, but just talk about just a media giant. I mean, I don't know how big you were on Price is Right, Dragon, but I was watching Price is Right pretty religiously back in the early 2000s. Like, I remember one of the big highlights of my summer vacations back in like middle school and high school was being able to watch The Price is Right every morning, every weekday morning, with Bob Barker, and just the excitement, the enthusiasm. I think I think the great thing about Bob Barker is just how well he bounced off of the actual contestants and the chemistry. Like this man was just a fucking pro. It's just instant chemistry. It didn't matter how awkward or off-putting any of the contestants would be, or if they were being overly fanboy about the whole situation. Like Bob, right? Like Bob would find a way to just instantly have chemistry with every single one of those people that ended up on stage. And frankly, Drew Carey, I love you. All due respect, I don't really think you were a great pick for the replacement role.
That's a little, come on, that's a little harsh.
I'm just saying, Drew does not do the whole audience interaction stuff nearly as good as Bob did it. That's all I'm saying. I mean, it's he's okay, but I don't know. I'm saying in the modern day Dragon, you look at someone like a Steve Harvey. Steve Harvey is someone who really knows how to interact with every single one of the people that comes on his shows. With Drew Carey, it's kind of he just, I feel like Drew Carey is just kind of rolling with the punches a lot of the time. I don't know. I will always love Drew Carey for Whose Line, okay? I will always love him for Whose Line, but I don't know. I think maybe nowadays, let's get maybe Scott Radowski or something from Trivia HQ. I could actually see him being a really good. I'm actually pretty enamored with that guy, Dragon, based on that documentary. So we'll talk about him soon.
We'll get there. Yeah, Bob Barker, though, one of the finest game show hosts ever. I mean, he's on the Mount Rushmore. It's him and Trebek.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
The only person, the big, it's like a Coke or Pepsi thing between Trebek and Bob Barker. Those are the two go-tos, in terms of who's leading the pack there. For me, I would say Bob Barker, but Trebek, though, I mean, he's Trebek.
I would honestly put Steve Harvey on that Rushmore as well.
I mean, probably on there, but he's not. He's not the first.
I know that he's more recent, but man, he kills it. Though.
Hey, he's great.
Every time I watch Family Feud, and I watch it it's one of those things where it's if I'm ever out in the family room where my grandparents are watching it, I will sit and watch the rest of the episode with them, and every time, Dragon, that man just kills it. But anyways,
Yeah, he's great. He's just not the first hit, is my point.
Sure.
That's the thing. So Bob Barker, apparently, very famously, you get your pets spayed or neutered. He was a vet. He was
die already.
What?
I'm sorry, that was not the best placement of that quote, but I'm quoting Brian Griffin.
Oh right, yeah. It's a good joke, Tiggy, but you said it kind of kind of a little dark.
No, I know. I'm terrible. That was not a good delivery on that.
Anyway, so the thing is, Bob Barker apparently that all of that really stemmed from he in life. He was a huge animal activist, animal rights activist. He was a vegetarian all through his life. He went to bat for animals all the time. He was very anti, fur and stuff. They try to give away goats and stuff on shows. So, I won't host the show. I won't do it if you have fur related products on there. I won't do it. He would people would say, "Hey, we want you to make appearances here," but he would find out oh no, you're actually mistreating your organizations that you represent or sponsoring the show or doing this sort of stuff. I won't take part in this. And he dug his heels in, and he cared a lot about this thing, and that's why he asked Drew Carey very respectfully, "Can you continue saying the thing when I'm not there?" He said, of course, absolutely, Bob Barker. I'll do that for you. So he just seemed like a very good man. I remember the Perfect Bid documentary. You remember that, right? With Theodore?
Yes.
That's the thing. The fact that he would again playing around with the contestants, and the fact he had that kind of that recurring thing with him where he would. It's funny if you look those, they show you Bob Barker versus Drew Carey. That Bob Barker, it's a thing of okay, the man actually gets on the show, and it's he's pounding around with him. He recognizes him from showing up to past tapings. Or Drew Carey's okay, this guy shows up, and he's basically becomes this guy wrecked the whole show. He's saying on my watch, this controversy happened because this guy's giving people hints. Anyway,
there's two things I want to bring up. Number one, I'm sure you've seen the Aaron Paul episode, right?
Well, yeah, that's why I mentioned Aaron Paul earlier too.
Right. I mean, that is just that's one of my examples of that guy was just very, very hyper, but Bob just rolled with it, man. Aaron, we love you, Aaron. Anyways, also we would be remiss to not bring up Happy
Hey,
Gilmore.
that was my next point. Yes, we got to
Uh-huh.
talk about Happy Gilmore.
I
So,
truly think that Happy Gilmore is one of the all-time great celebrity cameos in any movie. I mean, it just the level of like, it's like it's so good because it's like he's keeping up his like professional demeanor and likability, right? But at the same time, he is clearly being an antagonist towards Happy Gilmore himself.
hey,
So I feel like that cameo creates like this great kind of like juxtaposition in the audience where it's like we as an audience love this man, but we're also on Happy's side, and he is not being a nice guy to Happy Gilmore. You know what I mean? So it's like, oh man, so The Price is Wrong, Bobby, is actually like a very cathartic moment, and I think he plays that tightrope really well.
yeah, he's having fun with the persona that he's
Right, right.
years, and again, it's like a persona you get a sense as is pretty close to probably who he is, in terms of a really charismatic guy who like cares about animals, and he's like, he's a people person. Apparently, really mean to Adam Sandler. Aside from that, he's really
nice. Okay, and lastly, we have to talk about the man, the myth, the legend, the vibe himself, Mr. Jimmy Buffett. And Dragon, honestly, the only reason I even want to bring him up, because obviously he's not really a movie guy, but man, I have so much like musical nostalgia for Jimmy Buffett. I really strong. I am one of those people, like, I'm not old enough to remember him in his heyday or anything, but my parents spun his albums all the time. And his music, just very, very simply put, Dragon, for me, is comfort food. Like, I know that it's not like the deepest music in the world or anything, but man, I feel like his most popular songs can just really just put you in that vibe and in that, just kind of like, kind of calm you down almost. I would legitimately use his music as like a stress relief. But the other reason I wanted to bring him up, Dragon, is that he is a big part of Universal City Walk because his actual private plane, I believe it's called the Seafarer, is parked outside of Universal City Walk. Well, not outside, but it's outside of the Margaritaville. And it's like his actual plane. It's the actual one. And I think the reason why this is really notable is that in the other Margaritavilles throughout the country, you see reproductions of this plane all the time. But Universal Orlando has the real deal. So I don't know. I always thought that was really cool. Because of that, I always kind of felt like a certain level of attachment to Jimmy Buffett when it comes to like when I think of a Universal trip, I think of Jimmy Buffett in a way because of that. So, yeah, the man may be gone, but his vibes live on, and his songs truly are timeless. I mean, like I said, just some of the best, like, comfort music, put you in a good mood kind of music that's ever been recorded, and I stand by that. Is his music corny as hell? Yes, but there's a reason why he has a whole empire based on a song about a cheeseburger.
Well, when I think of Jimmy Buffett, I think of one thing: one of his fans.
Oh yeah.
Saul Goodman.
Oh, of course.
You remember the broken leg con in which we had
sure.
We had Jimmy showing up as like the brother with the with the Jimmy Buffett shirt.
Oh my god. All right. Okay, well, we are past the death, so we don't really have a lot of other news, Dragon. But why don't you take us through this strike update?
Yes. So apparently, I forget. I keep seeing like I don't know if it's 100% official yet, but it's very much looming. As in, it's like the thing when we heard like the actors were about to go on strike, and then it happened. So I believe this is pretty much like about the drop sort of thing. The video game industry is getting in on the strike, like as a show of solidarity, I guess, but also because now it's this thing of like we all want money now, But yeah, so it sounds like a whole bunch of like Insomniac games, for example, and everything. They're all getting in on the video game. That apparently they want I'm not exactly sure what they really get out of it specifically, but I guess they also want royalties, and specifically they want residuals for like their contributions to the video games that they make. I
I'm
guess
assuming this is mostly like is it voice actors or just game
I
developers?
think it's literally the develop. That's what it
Oh,
sounds like. Let me
interesting.
see if I can. I'm going to see if I can read exactly what it says, but um, hmm. No, sorry, no dice on that. But the point being, yeah, it sounds like the video game developers are getting in on the strike, which potentially, I really hope this doesn't happen because I already have my game pre-ordered for this. The Spider-Man 2 game. This
Yeah,
could
yeah.
cause like a big stink, and for some reason, even though people pre-order, the game is essentially done. If they're if they somehow withhold the release of that, that's where things are absolutely going to turn to bedlam. Already things are tough. But that Spider-Man game, people, that's what's we already have Spider-Man drama with the other stuff. This is the one thing we need. The one thing we need Spider-Man as far as a win goes, amidst all this craziness.
And then Dune Part 2 officially got delayed until I believe March of 2024, which I don't know. I think that's a little bit short sighted because it's like, what if the strike isn't resolved? Are you just going to move it again? Um, and then also, interestingly, Dragon, I brought this up.
Actually, I'm sorry. I found it. I found it.
Okay.
Okay, so it says SAG and the AFTRA plan to send a strike authorization vote for the video game industry after they failed to meet the needs of the video game actors. So it is the actors.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was wrong. It's not the developers. It's the actors.
I mean,
So
that makes more sense to be more tied into SAG.
it includes okay. So companies facing possible strike include Activision, EA, Epic Games, Insomniac Games, Take Two, and WB. So I don't know if that's Warner Bros. Montreal or not, but Warner Brothers. All right.
Okay.
Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, so apparently the Walking Dead spin-offs, which they have like 3 in the works, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, just let the franchise die already. You can let that die by all means. But apparently they got kind of like the same sort of deal that A24 is getting, where they are crossing the picket lines and filming, and apparently it's like SAG and Directors Guild approved, which I think is or I'm sorry, not Directors Guild, Writers Guild. And I think that's really interesting, just because, like, basically, Dragon, the reason I bring this up is because I honestly think the most likely outcome for this strike is that we are going to basically get studios kind of like, it's going to be, I truly don't think it's going to be like a resolution where it's just like, okay, like everything's resolved now. I truly think what's going to happen is that bit by bit studios are going to I think it's going to basically come to a studio by studio basis, and I think some studios are going to be a lot more stubborn than others. So AMC I kind of take is like, kind of like an A24 style studio where, sure, it's like I'm annoyed that that network has basically turned into like the Walking Dead factory. But, if they're going to address the actual terms that the writers and the actors are looking to get and meet them halfway on it, then I don't know. What do you think on that, Dragon? The fact that, like, it seems like some of these smaller studios are kind of are honestly kind of probably at an advantage right now because they don't have as much capital, so therefore there's not as much stake, and the wealth can kind of get spread around a little bit more.
You mean with the AMC stuff?
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I just think everything's in just such a tricky place right now because it feels like I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of pressure on these actors that no one's really talking about. They're be looked at like scabs or something because for example, like Kevin Smith, there's like this. I think there's like this limit of like if your budget is under a certain is a very minimal amount of money, you're allowed to film and stuff somehow. So Kevin Smith is in production on stuff, but.
So that makes more sense for like A24 than The Walking Dead, then.
Yeah, that's the thing. So the A24 that all that makes sense because it seems like the indie films are probably going to be they might rise to prominence.
Indie is king in 2024, baby, and I'm fucking excited for it. It's like the one silver lining of all this bullshit.
Well, if A24 did have a year that was going to go well for them. Regardless, so with the AMC stuff, I don't know.
I mean, I think 2022 went pretty well for them too, honestly.
Well, no, I'm just saying for the title to A24.
Right, yeah.
But, it's like if any year we're going to go well. Regardless, yeah, I mean, with AMC, I wonder if things are at some point things are going to reach a stance where people are going to say, "How can you help the studios agenda and everything?" Well, we need work and we want to work, obviously. And like, look, even the people on strike going home, it's like, what are we going to watch? Well, I guess reruns. At a certain point,
game shows, Dragon, lots and lots of game shows.
It's just. Just with the strike in general, yet again, it just feels it's a very difficult position because obviously the writers and the actors, particularly the writers, let's be honest, the actors are glomming onto the writers. I don't know how much that's just they think it's a fair deal as well. They want to help the writers, but also, hey, we get money if the writers win. Let's be honest. Regardless, though, it's the fact that we are on the writers' side collectively here because these guys are putting in the work and they're not. It's easier for an actor to get residuals than the writers and the actors, of course. They are now. They're kind of unified in that they want like the streaming residuals as well, which basically means a bigger paycheck for everyone. It's the tide that raises all ships. Mm-hmm. That said, I don't think anyone's considering that the reason the strike is going on for as long as it is because if the studios did pay out or somehow were able to track exactly like the residuals of like every time someone clicked the button or like binge the show all the way through or however many episodes they watched and they're able to somehow track that. I mean, I'm guesstimating here. I don't have the numbers in front of me or anything, but you have to imagine even if the studios are flush with cash right now, which obviously they are.
They're definitely not.
Some of them definitely not.
Especially Disney. Disney's kind of fucked right now.
This is what I'm saying. Things are at a standstill, and that's what no one's really talking about. I think they're looking at a little bit one side. Where look, it's bad on both sides, but the writers are definitely getting more of the shaft here. It's very much like if the studios pay out, then we're gonna go. Nothing. Then the studio's gonna go under, which will not help anyone. We need a happy medium, which is taking forever to reach for some reason, and Zaslav is not helping.
Oh dear God, no.
Yeah.
And frankly, Papa Bob isn't either.
Yeah, but I don't know. I still think Zaslav's a little worse off than Iger is right now. But I think Iger hasn't put his foot in his mouth, though. So it's not good on either side there. But I think Zaslav's been the one. I think he's been stoking the fires more. Iger's just been like I think stumbling into it. I think Zaslav's like, hey, let's put some kerosene on that fire. Roast some money marshmallows.
On fire tonight, boys.
Let's roast some money marshmallows. Let's just put money on a stick just to show we can burn the money.
Oh my God.
Yeah, look at that melting ink. It's gonna taste terrible, but you know what's gonna taste like? Wealth.
Kogia, speaking of Zaslav, he says, I'm still wondering if Aquaman 2 will get delayed. There still hasn't been a trailer released.
I'm convinced there's no way the movie's coming out.
I mean, especially if Dune got delayed when Dune already had 2 trailers out.
We had a lick of footage, all this Dune's getting pushed, but also it's just the fact that all the Amber Heard stuff too. That's not helping either. So
is she in the movie?
Look, at one point she was. I don't know if they're going to try and keep her to a minimum, then write her out, or if they're going to now cut her out completely because the press has gotten even worse on her. I don't know. All I know is there are reshoots, and now there's all these delays, and even if they wanted to do reshoots, I have a feeling that they would probably now be delayed even further. I don't know. The movie assumedly was in the can, or assumedly, but with all the reshoots and then with the strike, I can't tell which is which. I don't know.
And look at what happened with Craven, and I mean, it's not like we were chomping at the bits to see that movie or anything, but like Blink, and it's like a year away when it was like right around the corner.
Yep.
All right. Well, very messy situation all around. Okay. So why don't you talk them through the Disney Plus physical releases?
Sure. So after a brief scare, which apparently it might have been false reporting, but I think it was like a technical thing. Disney somehow took a picture without the disc and it got out, and people were fearing, like myself, like, of all the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life, how can they release, like, hey, we're finally releasing the Disney Plus shows physically like we should have done from the beginning. But
It
guess
is
what?
literally just like a box with a download code.
Yeah, we're basically selling the box of the download code, and they have like little like like little bonus, little extra stuff. Like, hey, here's like a little like here's the nice box art, and here's like like little pamphlet and all like
The pamphlets, Dragon, the DVD pamphlets.
exactly. Point being, none of that is at all what we want. But it seems like that might have been a false alarm. Either that, or they're just doing damage control. Saying, no, we're not doing that. That'd be stupid, right? Huh? Okay. So here's what we're actually doing. So so they're starting to release the Disney Plus series. From what I understand, they're starting. I know they're starting with Loki. To capitalize on Loki season 2 coming out, which I believe is coming out. I think physically probably next month in October to coincide with Loki. If not, then late September. So you have Loki. Then it sounds like I don't know if they're going to put them on one set or not, which is going to be a weird thing if they do that. It sounds they're going to do Mando seasons 1 and 2. Now I have to imagine they're going to do like 2 separate sets on that.
I am convinced that they just don't want people to think about Mando season 3. Dragon.
That's the thing. Here's the thing. If they release it as like season 1 and 2 on one set, that's them deliberately trying to downplay season 3. That's what that is. Otherwise, it's like okay, season.
I mean, honestly, including the Book of Boba Fett in that equation would be less brand damage than Mando season 3.
Yeah. So you have that, and then there's going to be WandaVision, which is the first one. They had like the whole rigmarole with the whole empty box campaign thing. So there's that. So all I know is it's about time. The best case scenario, which is not going to happen, like, hey, we're going to re-release the Marvel Netflix series, but under the Disney Plus banner physically, which would be the best case scenario. Because right now, if you track down the physical releases of the Netflix shows, they're overpriced and they have no bonus features, unfortunately. Re-release is indeed what they need, but in terms of this being practical, the Disney Plus series that I'm definitely looking forward to. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I definitely want that because the whole reason I got Disney Plus. So if anything bad happens, I'll at least have a fallback there. Stuff like Moon Knight, for example. What if? But honestly, ultimately, I would be tracking down all of them, but definitely prioritizing some more than others. Like the thing that kills me, there's still no commentaries.
I know. It's a lost art.
I just don't get it because the Marvel movies was
Favreau's totally ill-advised commentary on Lion King 2019 is still up there for everyone's listening pleasure on Disney Plus.
That's a whole nother can of worms. I'm just saying on the physical releases, it's so like the Marvel movies always have commentary with the Spider-Man movies and Black Widow, I presume because of the pandemic being the exception. And the first Iron Man, because technically they recorded commentary but got lost and no one, I guess, backed it up like an idiot. No one backed it up. Anyway, point being, it's just that I wish the bonus features were a little more there, but it's what it is. Point being, yay, we're getting physical releases. All right.
Okay. Next up, we have some trailers to go over. So, Rebel Moon. This is the new Zack Snyder joint. Dragon, I pretty much have the same opinion of this as I do every other Zack Snyder project, which is visually it looks really cool. I mean, I'm not going to deny that. This honestly might be the best looking Snyder movie yet. It's a cool concept, like kind of like taking like a medieval science fiction sort of approach to it. Unfortunately, Dragon, I just kind of feel like Snyder is not great with dialogue, and I was not impressed with the dialogue in this trailer, and I was not impressed with the acting on the lead performer either. So, I don't know. This is one of those things where it's like, I'll certainly watch it. I did enjoy his what was it, Land of the Dead? I get all the Dead movies confused, but the
Army of the Dead.
Army of the Dead, thank you. I did enjoy that one quite a bit. Although I still feel like a big part of that movie's strengths kind of like the opening credit sequence, that montage kind of like holds up a lot of that movie. So I'll be watching this on Netflix. I'm not over the moon about it, but Snyder is one of those directors where while I certainly don't worship at the altar of Snyder by any means, I'm always curious to see what he's going to do next. And I'll say this much, I don't think that the man has made his masterpiece yet. I really don't think so. So we'll see what happens with this.
Let me tell you this Rebel Moon thing, Tiki. It's just that it's Snyder taking a stab at Star Wars, which that's cool. We have Ed Skrein, we have a good cast there. It's good to see Ed Skrein, because he was really good in Deadpool, and seeing him just kind of pop up in things like Alita Battle Angel, for example. It's always kind of a delight. Oh, there he is. Putting him in this is good. It very much to me, my impression of this trailer looks all visual, no story. That's kind of my impression looking at this thing, which here's the thing where it's like, even if I were to give this a shot, here's the thing that already makes me throw my hands up in the air. Okay. At the end is part one releases then.
Yeah, that definitely was an eye roll moment for me. It's just like fucking like 2008 where all the movies are part one, part two again.
But here's the thing, I'm throwing my hands up in the air and says, he never learns. Zach, did you not learn anything from okay, put it all in one movie, okay? We have an incomplete Justice League movie that's 4 hours long. Still, God.
Yeah, that's
all right. It's like, give me a full effing movie, you maniac.
Okay.
God.
So I think you're more enthusiastic about this one than you are.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Finally, Scott Pilgrim. We got a minute-long trailer for the anime. Dragon, I'm really excited about this. I'd be even more excited about it if it wasn't just a retelling. I do think it has some potential, especially if they go a lot slower paced than the movie was, because basically, like with the movie, the first act of the movie is essentially like a pretty word for word recreation of the first book of the graphic novels. I think there's 6 books altogether. But I really think what they should do is have each book be its own season, because but I don't think it's going to be like that, though, because you see literally all of the X's in this trailer. So it's like, I don't know, unless we see like a montage of them or something. I think we're going to just go through the whole story of the first movie in this show, which, I mean, Dragon, if you actually read the graphic novels, which I have, the graphic novels, the story takes place over like a number of years. Like it basically shows the characters like going from their early 20s to their late 20s, and you see like a shit ton of character development. And if they're just going to speed run through the plot, that's like the one thing that I'm worried about, because like the evil X's and everything like that, like they were very spread out throughout the stories of the graphic novel. The graphic novels were focused a lot more just on the day-to-day interactions of the characters. So that's my hang up. But obviously the style is amazing. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean look, I saw the movie, I liked the movie. It looks interesting, but I do hope it's going to be different enough from the movie to really justify itself. Because otherwise, it does seem kind of like, okay, well, we're just having them all. Because we essentially did this. I think they did this like part of the pandemic or the anniversary or something during the pandemic. They all did like that Zoom call where they all basically read the script, or they read the script. They did something. I forget what it was.
Yeah, but what cast didn't reunite and do that kind of thing during the?
Yeah, that's that's my point. I'm just saying this might just been like a recorded version of that just put to the animation. For all I know, I'm hoping it's more than that. Obviously, I mean, it feels like it's just going to be an adaptation.
I feel like that was probably like the genesis for this project. I don't think they're literally going to use like the voice clips of that recording.
No, I'm just saying. I think you're right. It's the genesis of it. I wonder if like there's going to be more to it if they are going to take the long form approach or not, like you're suggesting. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, look, I'd
be extra excited about it if it was just a straight up sequel to the events of the movie. That I would be stoked about.
Mm. Oh well.
All right. Well, it's time to go into the main event time. And hey, we're 45 minutes in instead of an hour in. All right, August 2023 movies. So let's start out with Blue Beetle.
How did you feel about Blue Beetle?
You really want to know?
I'm not particularly, but you might as well tell me.
I thought it was okay, Dragon. I thought it was okay. I'm not very enthusiastic about it overall. Um, Here's my thing. I do one thing I will give credit for with the movie is that the family angle was fresh. I thought it was just going to be another Shazam. It wasn't. The whole Hispanic take on things was definitely fun. I was in a theater on movie theater day full of Hispanic audience members, and I could tell that they were just loving the family, and that definitely added to my experience. I had a coworker at my old job that very much reminded me of the grandmother, like right down to the fact that this woman did not speak a lick of English, but was just a very endearing grandmotherly figure. So like all of that stuff, I love. I love all the family stuff. I love. I love most of the characters involved in that dynamic. Unfortunately, I feel like the when it comes to the bad guy side of things, it's very weak. Susan Sarandon is like just almost a laughably generic villain, and then her sidekick, who has a very complicated name that I'm not going to try to pronounce because I know I'll butcher it. He basically becomes evil giant robot Jeff Bridges.
That's a little you could just say OMAC, but you know.
Well, I'm just saying, like the whole evil giant robot Jeff Bridges thing is like it's a trope, and it's Dragon. Let's just say like I was into this movie up until a certain point. I feel like the beat with the grandma in the third act, you know what it is. I don't want to spoil it, even though a trailer literally did. That was about the peak of the movie for me. And then after that, I felt like the third act, like the fighty fight stuff, it really dragged. So overall, I would give this like a high 6, maybe low 7. I think it's respectable enough. I do like the character work involved in it. It's on the villain side of things, and I also strongly think I'm wondering how you feel about this. I strongly think that instead of just working in another generic love interest, which I'm going to have a thing to say about generic love interest when we get to Gran Turismo as well, but instead of working in just another generic love interest, why not actually work in Ted Cord? Like, Dragon, it really bothers me that Ted Cord gets name dropped a lot in this movie, and we never see him. And I'm wondering how you feel about that.
All right, so overall, I think Blue Beetle. I thought this movie was fun, but it's held back by a weak story. Jaime Reyes, I think, is brought to life very well. There are some Shazam comparisons with the family angle. I think that's mostly just poor timing, just like we do the Shazam family, and then we like, hey, and we're doing Jaime Reyes, which is a very family driven story. It's I think okay. So with the Ted Cord thing, Ted Cord's complicated because Blue Beetle has a lot of Ant-Man comparisons potentially, but the way Blue Beetle works, the difference between that and Ant-Man, which the movie kind of represents, is that, well, Ted Cord in that story has to be dead and or gone, which, I mean, it's kind of the way it kind of works in the comic. We always bring people back, but let's just say Ted Cord, is out of the equation, so, Jaime Reyes can have the spotlight there. So that's kind of how that works. And, having the Blue Beetle tech and everything, the legacy. The problem is we don't acknowledge, like, Blue Beetle should have been a known entity beyond.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like we should have had some sort of Ted Cord flashback.
Yeah, I understand exactly.
He can't be like in the moment, like mentoring him, like Michael Douglas style. But
that's what I'm saying to you. It bothers me that we see the costume, we don't see him in the costume in like an opening of the movie or the flashback or something. Because again, I love the opening of the movie that borrows from the Incredible Hulk, which is like the little we're getting kind of the down low on the world and the history of the Scarab and Dan Garrett and Ted Cord and all that, like kind of like the Incredible Hulk kind of summarized everything we don't see on screen at the top in the credits of that movie. I thought that was great, and I just wish maybe in conjunction with that we saw Ted Cord in action flashback, just to establish who the guy was. But I mean, that said, I do like that we use his tech and everything, and that was cool. And I do like Here's the thing: our villain, the OMAC villain stuff, it has an interesting resolution. The problem is it's not earned at all getting there. It's too late, and we have the huge missed opportunity that like, hey, this guy has a really interesting story to him, and he could have been doing everything he does
Right.
in a conflicted way. But every time he gets in that costume, our bad guy gets into his costume. He's like, "You're not strong. Your family makes you weak." He's the anti Vin Diesel. Family's bad.
Exactly.
Which,
Oh, and by the way, with the whole family is bad thing, Dragon, that was like this whole movie is like filled with things that are just like, okay, like you're gonna set that up, and then I know exactly how it's gonna pay off. It's gonna pay off with Jaime saying, "Family's what makes me strong," and yep, like it's literally like some of the script is literally paid by numbers like that.
yep. So yes, that and also not every gag works because there's times where I feel the balance of the family's a little off, where we go from like, hey, jokey family to really low of lows moment when it happens. Like, dear God, it's so dark in this poor blue beat for this poor
Mhm.
Jaime Reyes character. Look what's happening to him.
And that
Everything's
father
going
is
down.
very likable
Yeah,
too.
that's the thing. The father character is wonderful. So I think we're hitting the emotion well in the family, and at times they're good, but sometimes we juxtapose them really oddly. In terms of like going from like the laughs of the family, which don't always work, to like the to to the
Okay, let me ask you something. There's another implied death in the third act, and I thought that was shot and conveyed so fucking poorly that I barely even registered what had happened.
when you say implied death. You don't mean
George Lopez's character.
oh, that thing.
Yeah, like when it happened, I was like, wait, what? What just happened?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I think it was more so it was telegraphed. Okay, obviously he's not dead. We didn't see a body. He's gonna be fine. That sort of thing. But you're right. I
I
mean,
thought that was very sloppy. Like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
especially when we're still dealing with the emotional fallout of the father. It's like there was no reason for that to be in there at all. That was to me one of the most sloppy moments of the whole movie.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, Blue Beetle. To address the comment from Code Geass here, he says, "Wonder what will happen to Blue Beetle in the future." James Gunn insisted that he's the first DCU character. So look, get the round things out. The James Gunn stuff that no one can really keep straight what's happening with James Gunn. Every time people ask him questions, no one's no one's asking him point blank the things we actually need to know. All right, everyone's asking him like he. So James, he's going to have the shorts, right? It's like, well, we're trying to figure that out right now. Versus like, hey, James, is Peacemaker like? What's the deal with Peacemaker and Blue Beetle? Do they carry over into and Shazam? Do they carry over into this
Uh-huh.
DCU or not? Like that's a legit question. No one's asking that question. Instead it's like the whole how
Honestly, my
dare.
best guess with this in particular is like I think we're going to see Jaime again. I wouldn't be surprised if we even saw his family again because his family was a big part of the. I feel like his family is kind of tied to him in the same way that Miss Marvel's family is tied to her, which is very fortunate for us on the Miss Marvel side of things because of a certain person that we have some ties to. Anyways, but yeah, overall, it's a pretty decent movie, but it's definitely held back by a weak script. All right.
All right.
Okay, next up we have Mutant Mayhem.
Yes.
I'll let you go first this time.
Yeah, so I thought this was great. I think it bodes well for more animated films taking on the Spider Verse. Like the different frame rate animation style. I always have a distance with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, though, like a respectful distance, just in the sense of like I wasn't there from the start, and I don't know if I could really get into the '80s show, but I do respect the property, and I've seen a little bit of it. For me, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show that I did watch the most I ever watched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the 2012 series, the CG one on Nickelodeon, which I liked, and obviously Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I really like the animated film. So I mean, I have an interest in the Ninja Turtles, but I'm always like a little on the fringes of it. I because there's a lot of mythology there. There's a different number of different versions, and I gotta admit, when I saw the trailer for this, I mean, obviously I was in love with the animation style, but I was a little worried about the whole like the actual teen voices, which they've never really done with the Ninja Turtles before. And obviously, it makes sense to make them teens, but I was a little worried. I don't know. Donnie sounds a little high in his voice, but watching the film itself, I think it's a very down to earth take. It's funny. It's got great action. I think everything worked. I'll admit though, the with the design of the film, there's an asymmetrical kind of style applied to it that I think you have to get used to. Everything's like a little lopsided and like the world design. But I think it works better in the world design than all the character designs because you have like news anchors with like who look like they have the mumps. You
Sure.
know. But yeah, so apparently the director on this co-directed Mitchell's versus the Machines, which I think really kind of shows.
I think that tracks quite well. Yeah, especially when the art. My favorite part of the art style is when it goes to straight up like notebook illustrations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Mitchell's very much to a lesser extent than this does, but it very much did do that type of stuff as well.
But yeah, I mean, I love the chemistry between the brothers. They feel like real teenagers.
How great is Jackie Chan?
Yeah, he. I don't like him dating the cockroach, but I love him.
No, I don't like that either. But Jackie Chan is the overprotective father shredder.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Splinter.
It was a great direction to go in for that character.
Yeah.
I love the design of 70s dad Splinter, by the way.
Oh yeah, with the mustache.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta ask you one thing. What did you think of Mondo Gecko?
So I recognize him instantly. Like, okay, it's Paul Rudd.
You know who I thought he was at first?
Who did you think he was?
Your enemy, Ben Schwartz.
No.
It just seemed like the type of role that Ben Schwartz would play.
No, I can see how you make the leap that it could have been.
Right?
I can see where you might make the leap, but no. But yeah, it was just funny that we have the ever lovable Paul Rudd yet again.
I honestly think Mondo Gecko steals the whole movie. I really do.
I'll tell you one thing that's really weird for me though. The little I do know about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's really weird seeing, at the very least, because I came in with the 2012 one always in my mind. Seeing Leo have the crush on April versus Donnie, that's really weird for me.
I got to be honest with you. I straight up I very much prefer it when it's just April O'Neil and Casey Jones having the romantic connection and not the turtles involved.
Well, again, obviously April never goes for the turtle. I'm just saying it's the one-sided like romance. Like, he likes her, but it's kind of odd seeing that not being Donnie because usually one of the main characters we give Donnie. Anyway.
Casey Jones, by the way, that's like the one element of this movie. I mean, I know it's mutant mayhem, but I really hope if there is because I know there's going to be a Nickelodeon series.
Is there?
Yeah, there is. That's already pretty much confirmed.
Wait, so doing that in connection to this?
Yes.
Huh. I did not know that.
But I really hope that that we get a theatrical sequel to this, and I really hope that theatrical sequel explores Casey Jones because Casey Jones for me is my favorite Ninja Turtles character.
Well, I mean, they teed up a sequel in a big way. Now, that's the thing. So the one reservation I do have with this movie is that it feels kind of like the Aquaman thing, where it's like it feels like they didn't know they were going to get another movie. I mean, I know it's probably not the case, seeing that apparently they have a series in the works I had no idea about. But let's just say the sense I get is that hey, we're going to take all of these these iconic rogues from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and we're essentially going to redeem them all. With the exception of
right.
And also from what I understand, they had like a last minute rewrite on something here. Well, not a last minute thing, but they had like the toys apparently kind of like I heard somewhere that I think it was Jeremy Johns or someone who said apparently Superfly was supposed to be Baxter Stockman as traditionally he is, which I was imagining that too. I imagine that Baxter Stockman is going to be Superfly, and we did not do that. So I don't know why they necessarily made that decision. I don't know. It feels a little. I mean, I guess it works out fine. It just kind of makes you wonder, like, yeah, because he has the hair and everything. And for a moment, I was expecting, is Giancarlo just going really street with this character? I'm impressed if he is. But I like that it sounds like playing it as his son though. It does feel like, oh, I can buy. It's going to sound weird. I can buy Ice Cube as Giancarlo's son.
Mhm.
Anyway, well, yeah, this movie's a great experience. I think it's a nice showcase and celebration of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and yeah, also I like New York coming together to help them towards the end. All that works really nicely.
Yeah, I think it's a nice little supplement to Spider Verse, where it's obviously not as ambitious as Spider Verse, but it's nice to kind of see something a little bit more down to earth in that same sort of like art style. And honestly, like I said, I feel like this movie, like, obviously it takes inspiration from Spider Verse, but I don't want to just say like, oh yeah, they're using the Spider Verse style, because I do think it is pretty distinct visually. Like I said, clearly taking inspiration from Spider Verse, but I like that they are kind of doing their own thing with it, with the watercolors and the notebook sketches and stuff like that. So yeah, overall I was very pleased with it. All right, what's next?
Okay, let's see. Next, I believe. Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yes. Next, we have. I guess it's to me then. The Beanie Bubble.
Yeah. All right. Well, I would watch this, but Apple.
Okay, so let me tell you, Bub. I know. Yes. Anyway. So yes, the Beanie Bubble. This is this very much feels like a companion piece to that Beanie Mania documentary they had on HBO Max.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you watched that, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, you're the one who told me about this whole Ty Warner character in the first.
Yes, man. I mean, I honestly, because I read the book that this movie was based off of, and if they even get it like half as accurate to how he was in the book, he was very much a character in the book, a very enigmatic character.
Yeah, yeah. So yes, as he's probably guessed, as a biopic on the whole Ty Warner affair, and Zach Galifianakis plays Ty Warner. Mm-hmm. He plays it very well.
I had Sam Rockwell, but I could see Galifianakis.
I mean, Ty Warner was a bit somewhat of a heavy man. I don't know.
Sure.
This is kind of like like it's like not like heavy, but this is kind of Zach Galifianakis and kind of like the Birdman era, kind of like.
It's just the book described him having a southern drawl, and that's kind of where I got the Rockwell.
No, that makes sense. I get that. Anyway, so yeah, this is honestly, I felt that it sounds like the critics aren't loving this, but I thought it was a very solid and kind of a nice summation of the whole Beanie crash. But there is a problem though. There's one problem in this movie for me. And the problem is they got too ambitious with the jumps in time. There's some time jumps in this movie. And the thing is, like, you have, I think what they're going for, what I liked is that you have these three women who were very pivotal and very key in the building of the Beanie Empire. And they kind of get introduced in our story at different points in time. And I get the logic of, okay, let's jump in time to where these stories are going, and it almost as a 3-act structure of sorts. And in retrospect, maybe that might have played better. Maybe, I don't know. If they had just sectioned it off like in a linear fashion, like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. But even so, even just jumping through 3 time periods, the problem is they intersect within each other's story. That's where things get messy. That's where we jump around too much. Where I think it'd be a lot simpler if these women never intersected until
Oppenheimer, guys, come on now. It doesn't have to be this complex.
Let's see, if they didn't intersect until, let's say, Act 3, until like where Lois blows or what have you, is when things actually crash. Until that happens, it feels like these 3 stories, it would have been easier because we keep like this year, then we're going back to this year, then we're going forward to this year. At a certain point, you lose track of like when something's happening with a certain woman. Also, fun fact: Sarah Snook plays one of the females. She plays,
nice.
Essentially, Ty Warner's girlfriend, and I forget if they got engaged. I forget if they actually tied the knot technically in the movie. I believe it's just an engagement. So yeah, she plays Sheila. So very solid role for her. She did a really good job. She was like a loving mother in this case, which is very apropos from what you.
I know, right?
Yeah, but that's I love how like seeing. I think her role in the introduction to Taiwan is really good, where he just plays this nice guy who's in the essentially is all about the Beanie Babies and all about like the precursor to the Beanie Babies. And he meets her.
Warner setting up the convention displays very obsessively at the beginning.
We see him at the convention and doing something really wacky. He does. He basically pretends he kind of dresses up like he is a customer, just walking around the place and just kind of like razzing the girl who's running the stand, who's one of the three, basically saying like, "Where's your displays? Where's this?" He is being really persnickety about the display and everything. So
okay, yeah, because that was one of the things they really emphasized in the book was how like he would just obsess over the convention display.
So they show that, yeah, so the way in which he kind of walks up to it like as a passerby, like, almost in disguise. Anyway, so you got that, but yeah, so the fact like he just kind of this woman who is I forget if it's through divorce or her husband passed, but he kind of meets. She swears like to be like essentially be alone, and then she meets Ty Warner, and she kind of she and her daughters get really charmed by this guy, and it's really, again, it's an interesting relationship because this guy, the idea is he was on top of the world here, and these
absolutely for a while,
these ladies made him billions, essentially, millions, and it's like greed versus family. Again, he could have had it all and family and everything, but he just kept getting greedy about it. You know, he's couldn't stop himself. And yeah, I think there's just one gag, if I remember it right, because they did a lot of the great stuff, like they replicated the infamous the truck, the boxes falling off the truck.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
they made it into like a
pandemonium, dude. I think I even remember that being on the news back in the 90s.
It's a big moment in the movie. There's like a truck crash. I don't know if it was like a crash in real life, and I think I know the boxes.
I think in real life it was literally just a box falling off onto the freeway.
They made it a little bit more dramatic here, and it looks cool. But the point being, there's this gag where I think they're having like a Christmas party, and I'm pretty sure he basically everyone's Christmas bonus is Beanie Babies.
I remember that. Yeah, that was really infamous. So
I'm pretty sure that that's the case. Yeah, that's absolutely what happened there, because it feels like he gave them like their bonuses like $10 million in Beanie
people were not happy about that shit. Do they get into the peanut the elephant thing? Specifics about why certain Beanie Babies became so valuable?
Yes, but not Peanut the elephant.
Yeah, okay, because Peanut the elephant, I remember like Peanut the elephant was basically like the holographic Charizard from the Pokemon trading cards.
Listen, they do give you the genesis of certain Beanie Babies and how certain ones became.
They bring up the Princess Diana one.
That one, it might have been a montage thing, but I don't believe they didn't really make a fine point about the Princess.
The funny thing about the Princess Diana one is I remember that shit happening in real time, where it's like everyone thought that it was going to be like a huge collector's item, including my mom, and my mom proudly got one. And even I was excited, like, oh my God, it's like the rarest fucking Beanie Baby. But then Dragon, honestly, the Princess Diana one, that was kind of like the beginning of the end, because people started to realize, like, wait a minute, the Princess Diana Beanie Baby was like way more mass marketed than most of the other Beanie Baby rollouts have been. So therefore, mass market equals less value. Anyways.
Yeah, but
I could wax poetic about the Beanie Baby shit all day.
Okay, I'm going to tell you this, and we're going to move on. There is one linchpin Beanie Baby that's kind of like has like a big role in things. I believe it's Spooky the Ghost Beanie Baby.
Huh. Okay, I don't really remember that one, honestly.
When I saw it, I recognized it, but I don't know the name of the thing, because as a kid, I had no idea they had names. But
oh, Dragon, they had names, they had birthdays.
I know that. I know
that was all part of the appeal.
As a kid, this to show you how divorced I was from the Beanie Baby culture. It was like I saw.
No, I was deep in the Beanie Baby lore with my mom when I was a kid. Honestly,
I was. Look at this way. I saw. I had some Beanie Babies, and I was there when the Beanie Babies were around. But I always figured it was like, okay, it's a little plush guy, and I have like a little heart tag.
Were you one of those kids who took the tie tags off?
I didn't take the tags off, but I didn't take the at the very least. Some of them may have gotten removed. I didn't remove them. If that happened, I don't
Right,
believe I
right.
removed any of them. But here's the thing: I mainly was there for the McDonald's.
Oh, okay. Do they go into that at all in the movie? Because
They they,
that was
they
also a really big moment.
They talk about the genesis of it, and
Uh,
I believe they talk about the armed guard thing too. Like, well, not the armed guard thing, but the whole the cops had to take him from point A to point B.
yes, yeah,
So
yeah.
they cover that, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, but it sounds like it's worth looking into, just given how
Yeah, it sounds
steep
like
you
I'd
are.
enjoy it for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so Gran Turismo. You haven't gotten around to this one yet, have you?
No, I don't think ultimately I'm. It doesn't look like I'm going to Tiki, but yeah, tell me about Gran Turismo.
So, Dragon, this was honestly like I had not seen a trailer for this movie until I went to go see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in Southern California. And that's when I first saw the trailer for that movie. And then the trailer would not leave, Dragon. Every single fucking movie that I went to, the trailer was there. And it's one of those trailers where it literally like kind of just goes through the plot of the movie beat by beat, point A to point B, and you're like, gee, I wonder how this movie's gonna go down. But I will say, through it all, I think this movie is actually quite good. With a big ol' asterisk, I think that this movie has a girlfriend character that is just entirely unneeded. She is honestly one of the most pointless love interest characters that I have ever seen in any movie. Honestly, just cut out all her scenes and replace them with more scenes of Jaimon Hansu as the father, and that would make for a better movie. But two things about this movie really work for me. Number one, the cast I think is electric. I mean, Hansu is great. He doesn't have that big of a role, but he's good in it. He's solid. But the two big standouts, I mean, of course you've got David Harbour, who is as fun as you could imagine him, as like basically a trainer who's trying to like whip these gamer guys into shape. Because the premise is essentially it's a contest to essentially draft the best Gran Turismo players in the world, and the winner of the contest gets to have a chance as a real race car driver. And so David Harbour is basically the guy who's like training them for the conditions of being in a real race car as opposed to just playing the game. And he's delightful. But the true star of the show, Dragon, for me, cast-wise, I got to admit, it's Orlando Bloom. Orlando Bloom is the marketing executive who comes up with the idea for the contest, and he just has such an excited energy to him, but also kind of like a manic energy. And in some ways, he's kind of the antagonist because he's the one who doesn't really have a lot of faith in the main character because he's looking at the whole thing more as like a marketing thing. And the main character isn't the most camera friendly person, like as far as like he's not great at doing interviews and stuff. And so there is that tension there with Orlando Bloom. But then David Harbour's like, no, like he's, like that guy might not, he might not be the most personable guy in the world, but talent is talent, and numbers don't lie, and he is the best that we have. And then also, Dragon, the racing scenes in this movie, for me, hands down, the best racing scenes I have ever seen in any movie. As far as how they're filmed, how they're edited, I love how we get some cool editing in regards to like how he thinks of the race in his mind's eye, with in relation to Gran Turismo, the video game. So we get kind of like almost kind of like lines on the screen representing like like different shortcuts on the tracks that he's made and stuff like that. Really goes out to showcase how Gran Turismo is a simulator. Like that was the thing with Gran Turismo. It was the real driving simulator. And the main character is likable. He's kind of like an up-and-comer as far as the actors go. He's like the most unknown person in the cast. It's one of those things where it's like they cast the main character, like all the people around the main character are like the big star power, and then the main character is kind of the everyman. But yeah, I mean, there's a crash scene in this movie that is frankly kind of like one of the most terrifying car crash scenes I've ever seen, like racing or otherwise. I mean, the way that it really puts you in the perspective, it was quite effective. So yeah, the movie's pretty generic. You pretty much know what's going to happen, and like I said, I do think that the love interest that they have in this movie is like a very, very thankless role that is literally just put in there for the main character to. It's very much a trophy girlfriend, Dragon. She has no personality whatsoever. But in spite of all that, like I said, between the really likable cast and the fact that the action scenes are done impeccably well, I ended up really, really liking it. Richard's Victims in the comments. He says I was deep into the Beanie Baby lore. What a sentence! There is lore, Richard's Victims. Don't you mistake it. There is definitely Beanie Baby lore. So yeah, Dragon, I absolutely would recommend whenever you do get a chance to see Gran Turismo. I liked it a lot more than something like Ford v Ferrari, which might be an unpopular opinion, but for me, it was a lot more engaging. All right.
All right, let me tell you about Vacation Friends 2.
I didn't know there was a Vacation Friends 1.
Yeah, well, I talked about it on Memoirs before.
Well, you know my memory.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is pretty bad.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
I mean, look, the first movie wasn't great. Obviously, it wasn't Yates either. But yeah, I mean, look, the first movie had going for it, though, at the very least, I believe these are purely Hulu produced movies, by the way, just so you know. These like Hulu makes these movies. The charm of
Springs was about the best thing that Hulu ever put out as far as original movies go.
Yeah, I'm not sure what some of the other Hulu originals are off the top of my head. But yeah, let's see. I mean, obviously, the best Hulu original I probably ever saw was Batman and Bill.
Right.
Bill Finger documentary.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so here's the first movie. The first movie had going for it was the charm of John Cena and Rel, the Rel character. Is it Rel Howard? Is that what his last name is? Little Rel, it's Little Rel something.
I'm sorry, I don't know who you're talking about. I'm sorry.
The TSA agent guy from Get Out.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I'd have to look it up. But I know you're saying it's Lil Rel, yeah.
The point being Rel. The charm, the whole the first movie is all about those two guys interacting, the two couples becoming vacation friends. You actually bought the friendship, and then it was the horror of our vacation friends who were wild and party crazy. They follow us to our day-to-day life, and we're making our lives.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about this movie because it reminded me of a horror movie that I watched with pretty much the same premise.
So that's the thing. So that was the premise, which basically, and the charm of that movie is them becoming friends, and then it's then we're kind of the comedy's kind of faltering a little bit upon the return. It has laughs, and we're loving John Cena, so it's okay. Second movie, though, it's basically that again, but to a much lesser degree.
Oh, geez.
It's very much back to formula, only it's just the bad parts, frankly. It's back to formula, only the bad parts of that formula, because we've already established they're friends, and the very top of the movie is okay, so they had they're friends, and they've kind of accepted the dynamic of the first movie, and Rel already is okay, I don't want to tell them what's going on, so we're trying to be secret. Thank goodness the whole movie wasn't built around we're trying to keep this secret. It was just for a brief moment, but still, the fact that they had the audacity to okay, we're gonna try doing that, and then things take weird turns. We bring in Steve Buscemi in the movie.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Now, we like Steve Buscemi.
I like Steve Buscemi, but he's kind of on the fringes right now, honestly.
Buscemi, he plays. Okay, so John Cena's wife, John Cena's wife, who is very much, kind of they had a baby, by the way, which is kind of funny. The fact that those two crazy party animals had to have a baby, and they're cursing up a storm, saying, "This baby's effing awesome." So the point being, Steve Buscemi plays that girl's father, and so the idea is like John Cena as a character. They do make a really funny point in the movie there, where he's like, he's telling Rel's wife that like you have to understand, I love everyone. Well, you can't love her. I love everyone. Mm-hmm. And they love me. Basically, the idea that he's so personal, the likability of John Cena is that everyone who comes in contact with him in the movie loves him, and vice versa, very truly makes a connection with them. But he has issues with his father-in-law. So that's the idea. There's that. And there's a number of terrible contrivances, which I won't bore you with. There's like one good part of this movie. There's one really funny gag. So the idea is like they're at a hotel owned by Korean business owners. It's a nice place. The idea is this an excuse to go Hawaii. Pretty much, it's almost like the Sandler effect of like, my friends are going to Hawaii, they're shooting in Hawaii, having a good time, and in real life, I'm sure. So basically, Rel is trying to impress the Korean bigwig so he can get the construction contract. So his business will be able to do all the construction for this hotel. Yada yada yada. The point being, to impress them.
Just painful.
Yeah. So the point being, John Cena needs to enter a drinking contest to outdrink the Koreans, and it's really funny.
Okay, that sounds funny.
That is.
I'm just saying with the plot contrivances there with the low ray stuff. That definitely sounds. That's way too complicated for a fucking comedy plot.
And it gets more contrived and like there's the idea like Steve Buscemi is essentially he's at a prison, and then there's this whole thing of like it's the dumbest thing ever where Rel suspects, like he did in the first movie, that something's up with these counterpoint in the movie, which in the first movie is John Cena. In this case, is okay. The Steve Buscemi character is going to botch everything up because he is an ex-con. Well, surprise, surprise, in the movie, he is still going to be an ex-con. So this whole like, is he this? Is he that? It's like, well, we know he's no good. Well, why is this a shock? Like, what is the point of all this of all this misdirect? Why? He's very clearly in the wrong here. There is no reveal.
Oh my god!
There's something very abhorrent happens. I'm going to tell you that in the movie. Something very like shocking. Like, oh god. You know, you want me to just tell you what it is?
I don't really care all that much either way, honestly.
Okay, it was because it's kind of something you have to hear or believe, I guess.
Okay.
It's really weird. They end up snorting someone's ashes.
Oh god!
Not just anyone's ashes. The John Cena's wife's mother's ashes.
Oh no! Oh god! That's
pretty bad.
Yeah, that's pretty wrong.
Okay, so just to summarize the good points, John Cena being charming with Korean people because the idea is he can speak Korean and they love him.
That does sound charming.
The drinking contest that he has, where he drinks one person literally under the table. And then one of the Korean actors is someone I believe from Kim's Convenience and Shang-Chi. It's Ronnie Chang or Chung, that guy. Remember they're the guy who's hosting the fights.
Yeah. I really like that guy.
That guy. He's in the movie. He's really nice. I like him. Yeah, there you go.
That was one of those characters that he's kind of one of those movie characters that I kind of wish had a little bit more screen time in that movie.
Yeah,
he had a lot of screen presence to him.
He's got like a little nice arc in the movie too. Like he was good.
Cool. All right.
Okay,
well, speaking of memorable character actors having really good arcs, Dragon.
Yeah.
Let's talk Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Well, real quick, Richard's Victims has some comments.
Okay. Isn't Dope Sick Hulu?
It is.
It is?
Yeah, no, it is, Tiki.
It is? Okay.
So but that's not a movie, though. But you're right. In terms of originals, period, Dope Sick is wonderful. Again, Hulu has good content on it. We're just saying that their movies... Palm Springs and their documentaries have really been like the best they've done.
All right. So yeah, Last Voyage of the Demeter, Dragon. This to me was the hidden gem of August. Essentially the premise for this movie is very simple. It's basically Alien, but with Dracula on a boat. And Dragon, your boy, Stefan Kapinsick, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Stefan Kapinsick, yeah.
Yeah. Dragon, he is the John Hurt.
Yeah.
Like, he is a central character who has a very memorable demise, and the demise is long and drawn out, and you get a lot of acting out of him through it.
Sadly, we keep doing that to him in recent things.
But you know what? I'm just really glad to like Dragon. I'm saying like he's like maybe the third lead after you have Corey Hawkins and then Dave Dismalshin are the two leads, and then he might be like the character with like the third most screen time. Like it was really great to see him in a role that was like it was pivotal to the movie. A lot of screen time, very memorable. I honestly think it's probably the best thing I've seen him in so far. But the movie itself is also just like it's got that kind of like old school like mid 2000s historical thriller energy to it. It's got a really cool atmosphere to it. Dave Dismalshin and Corey Hawkins are basically kind of like Corey Hawkins is sort of like just a ship hand who gets hired onto the ship at the last minute. Dismalshin is the first mate. There's a lot of chemistry between the ship hand and Dismalshin because Dismalshin is he's like one of the few people that he's like one of the last people to really buy into the fact that that there's something fucked up going on the ship, because basically it starts with the livestock being eaten, and then Captain Skit gets sick. That sickness, Dragon, let's just say with vampires and sunlight, if you're bitten by a vampire and you're exposed to sunlight, bad shit happens. Let's just say there's a moment with him with sunlight that's kind of the chest burster moment of the movie that's very memorable. And so it's a really, really solid little thriller, and it's got some great little character dynamics to it. The actual Dracula creature design is awesome. It's very much in kind of like the Nosferatu Count Olaf mold of it being more of a creature than a man. I've heard complaints of like, well, it's not the suave, sexy Dracula. And I'm like, no, you're right. It's absolutely not. And I think that's cool. We've seen enough of the suave, sexy Dracula. So yeah, Dragon, honestly, I would recommend this even for you because, it's like as far as like the actual horror elements go, I don't think it goes it goes hard, but in a really kind of like fun way. Like it kind of reminded me of the Mummy movies if they had a slightly darker tone to them. I don't know. It might be a little bit too intense for you on the horror side of things, but it's really like it is one of the few horror movies that I do think you would enjoy. So yeah, I don't think nearly enough people are talking about this one. I think it flew under the radar. I really enjoyed it. All right. It's more fun horror than Saw horror, I guess. And it's not necessarily. I mean, the Mummy comparison is more so in the mid-budget and then the star power it has. As far as the horror goes, like it's somewhere in between those two, honestly. All right. Well, Dragon, it's time to switch gears to TV.
Yep.
So let's talk through Rebels seasons 3 and 4, which this was you and I both caught up from this point, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. So you technically you got caught up a little bit more last month, but I got caught up this month for Ahsoka, so we're all caught up now. So yeah.
All right. So let's do season 3 first. I think season 3 was solid. I really like some of the stuff. I like the time jump a lot. You know me, I love a good time jump. I really like Kanan's arc. I really liked Callus's arc this season. My thing is, like, I don't really think that this season had, like, a defining moment in the same way that season 2 did. And a lot of people point to the Maul thing, and the Maul moment is awesome. The Obi-Wan moment with Maul is awesome. But let me tell you what I don't like about that episode, Dragon. I don't like that Ezra Bridger basically shoehorns himself into that situation. Like, to me, I truly think that episode would have worked a lot better as a whole episode if it was just like a Zuko alone episode just following Maul. I truly think that Ezra's presence in that episode just brings down the episode. The moment itself with Obi-Wan is awesome, and I'm not going to take that away from it. But I truly don't think Ezra needed to be there. But yeah, overall, I thought it was solid. I do think the show peaks in season 2, though. Not to give away my thoughts on season 4 quite yet, but I think nothing really peaked after. Nothing really got to the same level as what we had in the season 2 finale. I truly think that was the peak of Rebels, but I still enjoyed a lot of season 3. What do you think?
Well, yes. I mean, overall, of course, I finished this because I've been watching Rebels to get ready for Ahsoka, and being the time had kind of come upon us, I finally got back into it for the last half for the seasons to finish season 3 and go into 4. I think the back half feels like a kind of different show. There's a evolution in the tone of the series. Where I don't know if it's like peak is necessarily the right word to. It feels like it's very much like it's where the story changes. Like we have the big dramatic kind of midpoint, and then we kind of turn into a different show where the first half is very much kind of like misadventures that has a dramatic point at the end, and then we're kind of in the drama for 3.
And I guess I kind of preferred the misadventures, honestly. I don't know.
That's the thing. So I mean, we're firmly in the war in the back half. Ezra is become a Jedi, and we're introduced mainly like Thrawn really comes into prominence in 3.
I mean, Thrawn is great. That is one thing I'll say about 3 is that Thrawn is great. I fucking love Thrawn's music, man. That organ music. I mean, that is an inspired choice.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, season 3 specifically, it's very much the Maul season. It's the Darth Maul season where we're really paying that off. Him as like the dark kind of the mentor, like very much kind of the Vader for Ezra. It feels like he's very much the one trying to tempt him to the dark side. We have the big Kenobi showdown with Maul. It's a huge payoff through all the Filoni stuff. And then 4, on the other hand, 4 is kind of the track that leads us into Rogue One. It's where we really get. I know Saw Gerrera's around in 3, but we get the big payoff to Saw Gerrera in 4. Where this guy's it's the Forrest Whitaker extremist Saw Gerrera.
Yeah, so 4 for me, I honestly like the Saw Gerrera stuff at the start of the season was definitely interesting for sure. But I thought a lot of like the mid half of the first half of the season, so after the Saw Gerrera arc, but before the Kanan thing, I honestly thought was kind of spinning its wheels a little bit with just kind of like it was just a whole bunch of military strategy and but then obviously the Kanan episode, the Kanan death, one of the best episodes of the series. I can go on and on about how I legitimately think Kanan's death is the most powerful death in all of Star Wars. That fucking he gets his eyesight back right at the end, Dragon, right at the fucking end. It's awful. But then the season kicks into high gear after that, and we get I really think straight to the end. It was a great show after the Kanan episode. But I thought getting there was a little bit slow. I mean, the last couple episodes kind of building up to it with Hera, being tortured by the Empire and everything. That was definitely compelling for sure. But I don't know. I thought there was a bit of a slow pace to the first half, a little bit. I also kind of like my big black mark on season 4 is I don't think there was nearly enough Callus.
No, there wasn't.
Because it's like he had such a cool heel turn in season 3, and then he's just kind of there. He's just kind of around, not really doing much of anything notable.
Yeah, the tension. I think it was in 3. The tension was really good.
The tension was great in 3 because it's like Thrawn fucking knew that it was him, and he was just toying with him.
Oh yeah. So on the other, so with 4 specifically though, okay, so we have we're kind of building the Rogue One essentially, where we have the Sabine with the Darksaber. We kind of close the loop on Mandalore, which essentially the way that Sabine's story ends is
we had that really quick. We had that really cheap moment where it's like, oh shit, they just took out Sabine's whole family. No, they didn't. They're fine.
Yeah, that's not great.
I hated that.
Okay, the point Sabine, she got the Darksaber, and the big payoff to all that is like, okay, so she just this moment's been talked up in Mandalorian. He's like, yeah, Bo-Katan, she was handed the Darksaber, and everything went to ruin basically between shows. So like, hey, her being handed the Darksaber didn't go well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I like how we get into like the building of the Death Star with like the giant kyber crystals and how dangerous that is, and then we have Filoni's big thing. Filoni is obsessed with wolves, so we have like
Yeah.
this to me was my wow. I mean, I knew Filoni liked wolves, but this is why people are really doubling down the wolves thing. Apparently,
It really did.
Yeah, he really likes we put giant wolves in Star
I mean,
Wars.
I think those Loth wolves are pretty damn cool. I'm not gonna
No,
lie.
they are. But here's the thing: going into this season, like here's the thing: getting to the end of Rebels, like season 4, majority of which has the stuff of like I wouldn't believe it unless I saw it that we actually had these huge things in Star Wars that we we had no idea about unless you would specifically have watched Rebels. Like you have like the giant wolf, the low wolves, and then the other thing too, the biggest thing. We have time travel. Like people always talk about, we should do time travel in Star Wars and everything. Okay, time. Why on earth would we do time travel in Star Wars? Well, now I see the point of why. It saved Ahsoka's life apparently.
Totally.
So yeah, so I was really blown away by, oh my god, we had time travel in Star Wars in a legit way, through Jedi magic. Like, okay.
Yeah, I think it works.
Yeah, no, it absolutely works. I love like the payoff too of like Kanan's demise was a final lesson to prepare him for this encounter with the Emperor, which I love how that all panned out. Just Ezra made the big choice there, and he stuck at the Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
All
right. Next up, what do we got? We got My Adventures with Superman. Yeah, I binged this all yesterday.
Yeah, season 1.
Yeah. Dragon, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I liked it a lot. I do think it was maybe a little bit overhyped for me. It's all really good. I guess maybe I was kind of expecting something like, obviously I wasn't expecting Invincible as far as like, I knew it obviously wasn't going to be nearly as dark as Invincible. Obviously I wasn't expecting that. I didn't want that. I guess to me, my big issue is that I thought the stuff with the general, while interesting, definitely a cool kind of like substitute for Lex Luthor. I kind of thought he came into the equation a little too late, and so by the time that we actually get to him being plot relevant, it's a little bit. I just don't really feel like the season was building in the way that it probably could have. But that being said, I mean, just on an episode to episode level, the episodes themselves are really fun. Of course, I love the Mix of Spidlets episode. That might be my favorite one. And Dragon, just generally speaking, this, honest to God, might be the best Clark Kent Lois Lane chemistry ever. Like this Clark Kent and Lois Lane are just fucking adorable together. Like it's just, oh my god. I mean, it's like you want to talk about a contrast to like the useless love interest in Gran Turismo, man. Like I just fucking adore these two together.
Well, just something with your general point. I mean, the general's technically in it since episode 2, Tiki, so he hasn't just come out of nowhere. He's there.
No, I know. I guess it's just kind of like I feel like it was a little bit too slow of a build to him actually becoming a threat. I guess is what I'm saying.
Maybe. Regardless, yeah. So I think this is what Superman. Man, this show is what Superman should be. I mean, with the Studio Mirror Animation, which of course the guys who did Korra, yeah, that's the studio did the animation for Legend of Korra. They did this. It's very much in the spirit of American Alien, which is Max Landis's modern take on Superman, which I feel is the refreshing update on Superman that we really need right now.
That was a great book, yeah. I mean, probably some of the best writing of Landis's career, honestly.
That's what I'm saying. Like, American Alien to this is very much the track I think we need to take with Superman, which basically celebrates the Superman lore but updates it to kind of a modern setting, but doesn't really take away or lose anything from the original stuff. It just kind of adapts it. And I think Here's the thing. I think a lot of people realize that this show is better than anyone expected it to be. Because when this was announced, think about it. You had like, okay, we're doing the Cape Crusader show, which is the Bruce Timm art style back. Essentially, we're doing kind of like the kind of the Batman stuff we didn't quite see before. Like basically this, we always kind of jumped forward in Batman the animated series, never saw like kind of like him figuring things out. And on the flip side, when it was just like announced like a single image, like My Adventures with Superman on Adult Swim, and you have Clark, Jimmy, and Lois. It's going to be a comedy, it's going to be shenanigans. And it's like no one expected like, oh my god, this could be a potentially definitive Superman take. Who knew? We have Jack Quaid. He's great playing the year one version of Superman. That's the thing. I love this as a year one take on Superman, essentially, which it's a little better than Frank Miller's year one take on Superman.
Just a little bit, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, overall, Tiki, just to keep it simple, getting all the ins and outs of how much I love this show. DC needs more serialized animation like this with what they did here from storytelling direction, because Tiki, it's the only way in animation from the reinvent the wheel after the DCAU. It was the one thing the DCAU didn't quite have, with the exception
of serialization, right.
The closest thing they had was Justice League, which even so, it wasn't like episode serialization. It was like, okay, we're dealing with Cadmus for a season, so Cadmus is going to pay off. Or I mean, Legion of Doom was kind of the closest they got with that, but even so, it was they broke it up a lot. That's the thing. Like, there was something they realized very late into the game, where it's like something we have from the ground up. Like, well, we can serialize these and kind of connect them and kind of build towards stuff here. A lot of at its core, I'm just happy people are excited about Superman again, because Superman always got the shaft and things, and plus every time like, hey, Man of Steel, we have the Zack Snyder Superman. It's like, okay, this is promising too, and BVS happens. Like,
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, plus it's nice that right now we're all reveling in The Boys, but more so like Invincible, and all that's great. And I love Invincible. Invincible, I think, is the better balance between that and The Boys, but it just feels like we need an optimistic take on superheroes.
And this is very optimistic. I'll give you credit there.
I mean, my heart swells every time. I had a Superman show in which I saw him save people, and I was so elated when he was saving those people in that show, man. I loved it.
Also, just a quick shout out. I really like how they depict the Kents in this.
Yeah, the Kents are everyone got really good. Everyone was very well represented. Perry White as well. Everyone really got a good job.
Oh, one of the best Perry Whites.
Yeah. Delightful. Also, I won't spoil it, but I'm sure you're going to be really excited for season 2, because the character they reveal at the very end is.
Oh, I know who it is, Dragon. I know who it is.
Well, you know who's voicing him, right?
Yes, I know who's.
Good. Okay.
I caught that voice right away. Trust me.
Just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
I know that voice.
You're sold for season 2, then, right? You're coming back.
Oh yeah.
Good man. Okay.
And again, I do like with the general stuff. Well, I do think the pacing of it was a little off for me, a little bit too much of a slow burn. I do really respect the fact that they don't touch Luthor this season.
Well,
and the general is basically the surrogate of that.
Well, they haven't confirmed it, Tiki, but I think Smart Money's Lex is actually in this season, but he's in the background.
Is he?
Yeah, he is. Do you remember Anthony Ivo's little red-headed scientist friend, right?
Yes.
Lex.
Oh, shit.
His name, in the show, his name is Alex, but I think it stands to reason.
Oh, God, right.
Remember, like, Vicky Vale interviews
That's
Alex.
one thing I didn't really care. That was, like, the one character I didn't really care for.
Yeah, and I think that's a potential bad.
But then again, it's like, what can you really do with Vicky Vale? Like, at least it's something different. Like, the character herself isn't likable, but I don't really think she's written to be likable.
Well, the point being, she's interviewing that Alex guy, and Alex does not have nice words to say about Superman. And
right, okay, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
I think, look, I mean, I'll be shocked if it's that thing. Look, I won't say who, but let's just say the general, there was a 50-50 shot. He could have been 2 potential characters in the DC universe, and he ended up being the one that made the most sense. I do not fault them for. Okay.
All right. Next up, we have telemarketers. Did you get around to finishing this?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, Dragon, I thought episode 1 was clearly the best episode. And honestly, I thought every episode kind of like got less interesting as it went along. Did you have that?
I had the opposite, actually.
Really? Okay. Because for me, the real interesting point was when they were both still working for the company and kind of like doing the documentary like under the noses of the company. And for me, it's like the further disattached they got from the actual company, the more I was kind of like, okay, this is certainly still an interesting piece of investigative journalism, but there's not necessarily the danger that there was. So I don't know. Ultimately, I ended up liking this one, but for me, I thought that the build up in episode 1 didn't quite have the payoff, but you seem to think differently.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, it was a little. I was a little unsure about this going into it because I guess my instinct was I was expecting more of like an all-encompassing, like here's a documentary on telemarketers, period, across the board, where it was like one very specific example. But again, once I wrapped my mind around how that was going, I mean, it did progressively get more interesting to me as it went on. So. Like we're taking a very specific telemarketing end that I've been on the receiving end of. I haven't fallen prey to it, but I've gotten that. Have you gotten this call?
I don't even like entertain calls like this. Like if it's a number I don't know, I usually don't pick up.
Right. Anyway, but yeah, so I've heard this call, but this series was kind of eye opening to me. Like, oh god, this specific that's a con. I didn't know it was a con.
Well, just the fact, I mean, and again, I like that's to me that's probably why the first episode stuck out to me more than the other two, is just because of how much detail we were getting into the world and the different scripts and everything. And so, like I said, but like episodes 2 and 3 are still both really good. I just think that it turns into more of just a conventional piece of of investigative journalism, and I feel like that kind of like that sort of like fly on the wall kind of thing of episode 1 is kind of gone. But I will say that Pat is very much an enigmatic character to hang a documentary around.
Yeah, it's the fact that we have this very flawed whistleblower character. We see him screw things up a lot in that third episode.
Oh yeah.
That's what interests me. The fact that we have we're doing a Michael Moore thing, only the guy has no idea what he's doing.
Right.
But and that's the thing. So I really like that we did somewhat take the Michael Moore tactics there, and that we have like that scene where it's a very bittersweet resolution where he seems to finally have gotten somewhere, and then it's like moments later we catch it in real time. It's like, yeah, hey, you guys getting out of here anytime soon? Like, wait, what? He said he was going to be back. He said he was going to send you guys to help.
Right.
Like, yeah. It's a gut punch, Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was definitely really good. I don't know. I think it's probably just a personal preference thing with me and the.
I mean, look, the first episode's fun. I'm just saying, I think on a rewatch, I don't know how I feel.
Remember how I was talking about that Cropsey documentary from last month, where I found like the initial setup to be super compelling, and then once it got into like, okay, now it's just like kind of like a piece of investigative journalism about a murder. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like that. Although, I think that this is like obviously the last 2/3 of this are way better than the last 2/3 of Cropsey. But still, it's kind of that same effect.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so Dragon, you got a mystery show.
Yes, I do.
I'm nervous. Okay, what is it?
All right, let's see. Are you ready for it?
Sure.
Over the Garden Wall.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, that's a big one, man. That's a big one.
You can blame Zaslav for why this is happening so early. Because
wait, is he taking it fucking off of HBO Max?
Tiki, it's already off.
Oh my lord! Oh my fucking lord! Fuck Zaslav! Jesus Christ!
Yeah, that's why I had to get it in, because he was getting rid of it at the end of the month.
So now, basically, the only way to watch it is to do the fucking watch cartoons route.
Yeah, we'll blame Zaslav.
I do. I most certainly do.
If Zaslav doesn't like it, he can laugh his way to the bank.
I mean, that should be one of those things on your streaming service.
The creator's not happy about it either. He's voiced his discontent.
Why would you take it off literally as fall is starting?
Yep. Doesn't make
Ah,
any sense.
okay. Well, what do you think of it?
So I mean, yeah, it's interesting looking at this because it feels like very much like a precursor to something like Infinity Train with like the miniseries
I still
format.
stand by. I think this was the absolute artistic peak of Cartoon Network as a studio.
I mean, I really support what they did here with the whole mini doing it like as like a little a
Mhm.
literal mini series.
I truly think if Cartoon Network really would have gone all in on this kind of approach, and it looked like they wanted to with Infinity
Yeah,
Train.
I'm just saying that you have a show like this, which is very directly miniseries and is not coming back for anymore. It's a very
Uh,
concrete story now. Infinity Train was open ended enough to come back, but you could technically take any of those seasons as like a standalone sort of thing, technically.
sure.
But that's the thing. So it's very much like you have shows that are kind of in that vein of like very creator driven. They're kind of they're going against the grain of what we kind of have like the usual series. And there's like there's an arc with the characters. It has a very deliberate payoff. So I like that, and I think this is very much this is what gets that started. We don't get Infinity Train without this kind of like.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is absolutely the brickwork to Infinity Train for sure.
Do you know anything about that? Can you remind me? I forget if you put it on one of the memoirs in the past. The show Hildy, or is it Hilda?
I don't think I've actually seen it, but yeah, I know of it. I think it's
Yeah, Hilda. I forget if that's. I think it's a Netflix show. I forget
it
if that's
is.
like following in the vein of like something like this or not. I don't know if it's. I think it's multiple seasons, so probably not. But it could be an Infinity. It has an art style in the vein of these sorts of things. But
Mhm.
anyway, yeah, it's. I thought this was good. It's a similar premise to Infinity
I
Train in the
just really
sense.
dig the fall vibes, man. This is just such a comfort watch for me around Halloween.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like that's a. I think it's set at Halloween, very much so. It's very
Very
much.
much so. It's very much a Halloween thing, but you don't really know until the end.
Yeah. So it's similar. You're wondering why the heck is he dressed like that? What's with the
Uh
hat?
huh.
We know. So the thing is similar to Infinity Train, only with a more Grimm's fairy tale kind of vibe to it.
Sure,
Kind of
sure,
Grimm's
sure.
fairy tale kind of setting.
I got
I
to
would.
admit, as much as I love Infinity Train, especially Infinity Train Book 3, I still think this is probably the like magnum opus.
I. I don't know if I can say that because I. Here's the thing. I
I'm just
think
saying, like
this.
Infinity Train Book 3 is like probably like more ambitious and like it hits harder and it's got higher highs. But Dragon, like I Infinity Train Book 3 is just emotionally exhausting. It's an emotionally exhausting experience. Whereas this show it's like a warm fucking blanket of comfort. So it's like it might not be like the best, but for me, it's like it is like the go-to.
Man, I like how the show is unsettling in the right ways. Like the opening of
Right,
every
right.
episode has like like the music playing and everything. It puts you in the right. It
What
does.
do you think of potatoes and molasses?
Okay, so that's what I was about to get to. I,
I
I, I,
had a
I
feeling you wouldn't like potatoes and molasses.
I do think there are a few hiccup episodes within our narrative here. I think the school town is.
I liked the school episode just because I feel like it was very much a callback to like early animated shorts, like that kind of vibe and style.
Yeah, but still, it's like Wirt being very petulant and says, "Oh, right, because I can't do anything. I'm just gonna be here, go to school, because
Right.
I'm not useful in this adventure."
Mhm.
I don't know, stuff like this felt like okay, he's just really digging his heels in. We're stuck with potatoes and molasses. So, but yeah, and also the show has some really weird stuff, in a good way. I mean, one example, the Woodsman is top tier. I love the Woodsman, everything about him.
Great Christopher Lloyd role, like arguably one of the best, like post Doc Brown Christopher Lloyd roles, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah, sure. It's basically the hacker with teeth, man. Because the hacker is always like a fun thing that he did, is like the over the top villain. But it's like, okay, we're giving like a real meaty role to play here. It's not strictly a villain, but he's in league with the villain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so all that. So that overall, it did live up. It lived up to the hype in ways I didn't expect. Admittedly, I don't think it's like the straight line I think it was promised, but it is good. It is good.
Fair enough. All right, and then you got Good Omens 2.
Yeah. Now, Tiki, I really do recommend this to you for this reason. I think they ironed out the issues with season one, and that
Where it's just
season
like overly twee.
that's the thing. So there's a pro and con to this season. Okay, so the issue in season 1 was that episode 3 of season 1 was the best because that was the Aziraphale and Crowley episode. That was that was all of them. That was about their dynamic, their friendship, and the history. All the years. It felt the most Neil Gaiman of all the episodes. It was great. And the problem with season 1 is there's too many plot lines.
Yeah.
It's roughly roughly 3 plot lines.
I was not invested in the Antichrist side of things at all the whole season.
So that's the thing. So you have that going on in season 1. Season 1's too busy. But again, the best part is like the midpoint, season episode 3, which is all those 2 characters. Now, season 2 flips that. Season 2 is all Aziraphale and Crowley. They got rid of the subplot. It's all their plot. It's all them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's all them in service of like one thing that does correlate to the human side of the story, which again does not overtake things at all, doesn't deviate focus, is Aziraphale and Crowley's story. The only issue is it's kind of hard to top the apocalypse in terms of what the stakes are. The stakes are very low. If you want a comfort watch, absolutely watch this, Tiki. I'll tell you that much. In terms of it's a very low stakes compared to the first season, which is like the only negative I really have on it. So it's very mundane in a sense of, okay, what are the stakes? They have to make two humans fall in love. That's the stakes.
Right.
But it's very enjoyable, man, seeing our boys interact here and just seeing their chemistry and just them bounce off of each other. Like the theme of season 2.
I mean, that still must be like some of the all-time best like book to screen casting, I think, with those 2 characters.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So yeah, it's basically they're playing matchmakers this season to prevent the conflict, which again minimal, but to prevent the conflict. There's a big setup for season 3, which everyone's really hoping happens. And Neil Gaiman says, "Look, if the network doesn't give us a season 3, I'm going to turn to a graphic novel. We're going to make it happen." But nice. We're going to do season 3. I hope it ends up on the screen because we love seeing these guys.
I am still to this day bitter about the Tick.
Yeah,
that was just a fucking travesty.
Yeah,
we were this close to Chairhead.
I know, Chairface.
Sorry.
All right, so I'm hopeful that season 3 is going to be made. There's this really great episode too. There's one episode that kind of is mirroring episode 3 from the first season, where it's I believe it's entirely set in the past, in which it's basically you remember in the first season, Aziraphale, he was a magician at a kid's birthday party.
Yeah.
And Crowley dreads it.
Right.
So in this season, you get to see the genesis of they had a basically Aziraphale was a stage magician for an episode, and Crowley had to help him out during the act. It's really funny.
Oh God.
Because he wants to do the bullet catch. Anyway, so the it ends in a big way as far as character arcs go for Aziraphale and Crowley. That a lot of people are going to feel a certain way about, but basically something really big happens, which I think is why everyone is dying for a season 3. So at least for comfort purposes, give it a watch, man.
Okay, I mean it's not like high on my list, but I'll see if I get around to it.
46 episodes.
All right. Okay, so Eat the Rich, the GameStop saga. You haven't seen it, right?
I started this, but I never finished it. Tell me how is this?
That's fair. Honestly, I don't really think it gets more compelling as it goes along. I strongly think that this is one of those documentary miniseries that really could have just been a movie. I mean, literally every episode is 40 minutes.
Well, aren't they essentially making this? Aren't they essentially making this into the movie with Paul Dano?
Yes, and that's exactly why I watched this, is because they're making it into the movie Dumb Money, which is coming out this month, by the way, which is why I was like, oh shit, I really should get on that GameStop.
I was really hoping it would be out by Labor Day, but it's not.
But yeah, I mean, essentially, Dragon, this is it very much kind of I mean, obviously this is a movie, and this is a documentary. What I'm about to reference is a movie, but it very much has kind of the same vibe as The Big Short, where it's charismatic people explaining something that's very complicated in the most charismatic way they can. I guess for me, I could see how if you just kind of went into this not really knowing the ins and outs of it at all, that you could just get bored with it. I personally had a coworker who would bug me all the time about like, hey, you got to get on Robin Hood, bro. You got to get on Robin Hood. And so it's like Dragon, like, so I knew one of these people, you know, who was very much like trying to play the stock game. And so because of my association with that person, I did kind of like, that was kind of like my foot in the door, and I kind of got what they were saying. But it is a very complex situation. I do think it's really funny though. Like I think it's gonna make for a better movie than it did a documentary, frankly, because the whole thing is basically just like all these stock bros kind of playing Icarus and flying too close to the sun and not knowing when to quit. You know, the metaphor of like the gambler who's like up ahead a lot but doesn't know when to actually walk away from the table is very much in play here. As far as like the actual mechanics of it go, I still don't think my little mind has wrapped around it completely. But like I said, the people who are being interviewed in this documentary are very charismatic and they pull you through it. So I enjoyed it. I'd give it about a 7 out of 10. But like I said, I think as a documentary, it probably could have just been a movie instead of a 3-episode miniseries. Honestly, one of the less substantial things I watched this month in general. But, you know, like I said, obviously watching it got me kind of more prepared for I was going to say Mad Money. I'm pretty sure Dumb Money is literally used to take on Mad Money, which I think is funny. But, yeah. So, overall, pretty good. All right. Okay, so SpongeBob DocuPants. Is this on Paramount Plus?
No, it's on Amazon, actually.
Oh, it's on Amazon. That's weird.
I don't know if it's a dual thing or maybe it's on Paramount as well. But
it's funny because I actually use Paramount Plus on Amazon because I trust the Amazon app more than the Paramount Plus app. So
it's a wise principle.
Right.
Anyway, SpongeBob Documents, I highly recommend it, Tiki, because it's real short too. It's like there's segments like maybe like, I don't know, like 15, 20 minutes most. But yeah, it's like it's gonna be under a run. Anyway, point being. This essentially is it's kind of a mockumentary sort of thing where it's like it's a few episodes, like maybe like 7 or 8 episodes. You have, I assume they're actors playing professionals, but there's a slim chance they could actually be like trained professionals in their fields, of people like of these seemingly like people who are like experts in certain sort of fields, recapping moments from SpongeBob but playing it completely straight as if it's like history that happened. So like they're talking about, you know, SpongeBob and like Eugene Krabs and there's
okay. I think I heard about this. Yeah.
They have like a rise and fall story of like SpongeBob and his fry cooking career, and you have like a true crime story with centered around the Nasty
So it's
Patty.
kind of like what Better Call Saul was doing with their little webisodes.
Yeah. Well, with the American, the American crime story thing that they did on the
right. Yeah.
That whole thing. So it's exactly like that. Yeah. So basically, they have like live action people talking about SpongeBob in these events. Like feels like super fans talking about SpongeBob, and they're covering even the animation errors. They're even bringing up in all the details here. It's really funny. So you have like the Nasty Patty being talked about, but as a true crime documentary. You have the Fry Cook Games as like the Olympic documentary. You Band Geeks is like the music industry. You know, it's stuff like that. It's like, you know, and the fact that, you know, Eugene Krabs like a mentor to SpongeBob and everything, and you know, like the whole like Krabs and Plankton, and like they're not even just sticking to the original 3. They're jumping around a little bit, you know, but the good stuff. So it's silly, it's very funny. It's Tiki, to be frank, it's the kind of thing that we do. Like we play at deadpan saying those actually did happen to these fictional characters.
Right.
You know, it's a SpongeBob gags played absolutely straight. Like for example, the whole Rise and Fall of the Fry Cook. You have like the pilot of SpongeBob, and you have the Pickles episode. You know, with Seabass. You know. Anyway, Bubble Bass, sorry, not Seabass. I think something else. With Bubble Bass, and he had the getting like the crux to him. It's like, and we were all gobsmacked, and but SpongeBob saw something. He lifted the tongue out, and he had been hiding the pickles under his tongue the whole. So they're talking completely deadpan.
That sounds delightful. I need to check
Yeah.
it out.
That's like real brief too. Like, will not take long and everything. I think
Uh-huh.
they ended kind of weak because they ended like Larry the Lobster, like a very that's the most recent SpongeBob era episode they use. Is like, yeah, we didn't really need that. But aside from that, though,
Did I tell you that they brought back Bubble Bass in the Patrick Star show, and
I think you mentioned that.
he's literally Doug Walker?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fucking trippy to see SpongeBob reference Doug Walker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways,
Take that, cat lover.
oh god. Okay, so the Joker blogs. I mean, do you want me to just kind of give my thoughts on the whole series, or
Yeah,
what?
might as well. Just the whole series. Just tell them about it.
All right, so if y'all weren't watching, Dragon and I did this as a kind of a vlog series where I would, kind of in the style of our animated Batcaves, where I would watch every episode and get my thoughts on them. Essentially, it's a found footage fan series, basically where they have an actor who is very, very eerily close to Heath Ledger's Joker, kind of essentially like an unofficial sequel to Nolan's Dark Knight. Like, what if the Joker from Nolan's Dark Knight verse was had more of a role to play? And Dragon, the whole time we were doing this vlog, you had a little ace up your sleeve in the fact that the series does not end in a satisfying way whatsoever. And so, yeah, that, I mean, honestly, Dragon, that moment on the podcast where I put the pieces together and realized that the last episode that we had talked about was going to be the last episode that we were going to talk about, that was kind of an all-timer for me, man. Like, you really did pull a great long con on me, and that was honestly like probably like just as memorable as the ride of getting to that point itself. So yeah, I mean, overall the series, like, obviously I would like a wrap up. That's never gonna happen, clearly, but for what it is, especially that first season where it's really leaning into the found footage of it all, it is quite good. I mean, I'm always a fan of some good found footage, so I don't really know what else to say there. Obviously, watch our Joker blogs retrospectives if you want more. All right, Joker blogs case study, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then finally we have. Okay, Dreg, I'm glad you watched this because I've been seeing it, but I've been a little bit on the fence because I don't want it to just be Warner Brothers propaganda. So what do you think of 100 Years of Warner Brothers?
Okay, yeah. So this was so Leslie Iwerks did this, but again.
Oh, it's another Leslie Iwerks thing. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a 4-part retrospective on the history of Warner Brothers. It's yeah, Morgan Freeman narrates this. It's basically overall. I mean, I enjoyed this. It's yeah, I think up until the last part, it feels like until we kind of go to like today at the obviously up until the very end of this of the 4 parts, it feels like just like generally like the history of Warner Brothers, which I mean I think it's a little lost in the shuffle at times, like just how many achievements Warner Brothers has, because we do have. I kind of wish someone would do like a big documentary on like on the studio systems period. Like it used to be like kind of like almost.
I mean,
like
I would love to see a Carl Lambley documentary.
Well, I mean, think about this, Tiki. It's almost like the five mob families you'd have with the 5.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely like that.
So
yeah.
that's the kind of thing I'd like to see. Kind of like, bro. So this is kind of like a little taste of that here, where you have like we learn about the actual Warner Brothers, not the animated ones, but and the Warner Sister Dot. But you learn about the actual.
Was
Warner
there
Brothers.
a Warner Sister?
No, there's no Warner Sister.
I figured there wasn't.
That's the thing. You have Jack Warner, who was again in. I think I told you about this series once. Feud, Betty and Joan, like one of the
yeah, I remember you telling me about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was FX, one of the FX shows.
Uh-huh.
And Stanley Tucci played Jack Warner, and Jack Warner historically he's a real piece of work. So he's he basically screwed his brothers out of the company, which is really, they cover that here very well. Makes me want to see Tucci play Jack Warner again. But anyway, But yeah, so they go through the film eras essentially per the parts here, and with a big thing, two things that Warner Bros. I had no idea about was the jump to TV was really huge for them, and their big splash in the TV really was Roots. That was the big thing that set them on fire with the TV stuff. Like doing Roots is everyone, their mother watched Roots when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was huge. The other thing is that Atari did a number on them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they apparently they invested in Atari, and so when Atari,
Oh man,
so basically they were attaching themselves to Atari, which
Atari is still technically around, but really in name only.
well, that's the thing. I'm saying they were like going for Atari, and then literally they cover the whole ET thing, and like, yeah, it hurt them. So yeah, it's by the fourth part they get into like the directors and the franchising that kind of took place, but towards the tail end, we have like I do love the way in which we broach the pandemic, because they talk about the filming of Elvis, in which it's like they have this gobsmack moment of like Tom Hanks is sick and like America.
Oh yeah, right.
So they cover that really well, and then we get into the puff piece at the very end. We're like Zasloff. That you can tell they kept Zasloff to the barest minimum.
Yeah, it would.
You can tell. So Zasloff
is kind of like the Mike Michaud of Warner Brothers.
He is. So
he's there, but no one really wants to talk about him or acknowledge him.
So he's at the very top of the documentary, just like basically he's walking through his office, and then he's like looking at. What really burns me up about Zasloff. That guy, he gets to have the Maltese Falcon in his office.
Oh God!
Like the actual prop. Like, he shouldn't have the Maltese Falcon. He doesn't deserve that prop. Anyway,
it's only one of the most iconic movie props of all time. No big deal.
Yep. Anyway, so very end, you have Zasloff sitting down, and he's basically you get a sense like
you like trying to do the Uncle Eisner thing.
Well, no. It's he's basically doing an interview. I forget with who, but he's doing an interview basically explaining like the Warner Brothers name's important, and they're spinning the whole Discovery thing. That's essentially
God! No!
It's him being asked about the Discovery merger buyout or whatever you want to call it, and he basically him saying no, we want to celebrate Warner Bros. I insisted we keep the name on this Discovery thing. Saying the Discovery merger is like a big boon for the industry and everything. I don't think they really. They addressed like the Hulu Animaniacs, but not the original Animaniacs, which I thought was a real smack in the face.
Voice.
Saying like we own so many. In fact, that Zasloff's like we own so many properties and everything. It's
no, you don't want to go that direction. Come on.
I know, and then they're showing like Animaniacs on Hulu, and it's not.
Don't go full Disney. You never go full Disney.
Anyway, so also Iron Giant did get acknowledged in a clip, but it just feels like it's one clip versus like, hey, let's talk about the animation division of Warner Brothers. Not really,
Right. I mean, that does seem like something that would. Especially like animation in Warner Brothers constantly gets screwed over. Dragon Warner Animation Group also got very screwed over.
I wonder how much of that is like we're not talking about Iron Giant because again it was really egg on the studio's face. We really should have promoted that better. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so now catch up.
Well, there's one more show.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so lastly, Depp v. Heard. This is the big Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial thing.
I literally just lived through this, Dragon. I don't need to watch a documentary about it. That's kind of my attitude about it.
Well, that's the thing. I didn't quite live through it. I was so much on the fringe. All I knew is like this thing was going on. I didn't even know it was televised until like I saw like one brief clip of like one of them on the stand. Like, oh, so it is being televised. So rarely do we see that these days, and it being a big deal. I would hear about the stuff. I heard everything secondhand. I never saw the actual thing. So I think if you were in my shoes, you know nothing about what had happened aside from what you've heard secondhand, but you get to see it, and it is nicely presented, Tiki. I think the presentation of this is nice. If you have distance from it, I'd say go for it if you did. But it's the idea that, okay, we're basically able to put both of their testimonies side by side in the editing, seeing how things match up. And the real story of this thing is about how the media and everyone's kind of reacting to this. Like, obviously all the, like the YouTubers and everything having like thoughts and pointed opinions about things and how that's kind of changing narratives and everything. And so
I
all
mean,
that.
for me, it was even less so. I guess kind of part of the reason why I'm put off to this is it was less so YouTubers having opinions about it and more so YouTubers just blatantly exploiting the story for clickbait.
Well, yeah, that's essentially what they cover in this, Tiki, and that's essentially it's honestly almost. I mean, it's kind of half and half. It's half the trial, half just kind of the media. And
so if they actually do get into the clickbait culture, then yeah, I might be into it.
Tiki, they absolutely. It's I don't know if the breakdown's accurate here the way I'm saying it, but I think.
Oh, Dragon, do we see? Is there any Andy Signore in this documentary?
Tiki, he's all over this documentary.
Is he? Oh fuck! Yeah. Oh, I need to watch it.
There's a lot of Signore in this.
Oh, I need to watch this then. Yeah, because honestly, that was to me him just whoring out the trial was like the thing that made me like just unsubscribe from him.
And he's absolutely doing that in this.
Okay. Oh, you just sold me with that right there. We're gonna talk about Andy Signore one more time with one of my catch-up things too. That's the funny thing.
All right, so that's the thing. So with so I can't remember if it's like episode 1's pure trial, and then 2 is when we get into the media response, which brings Signore, and then he's basically 2 and 3 is when the media is all definitely in that. I forget if they're in 1 or sprinkled through 1 or not, but basically 2 onwards when they get into how broad the thing's going to go beyond that. So I think it's worth checking out, man. Especially if you're.
No, I mean,
they cover what you're looking for. Totally. Here. It sounds like
Right. All right, so now we get to catch up.
Yes.
Okay, let me change the banner out really quick. Okay. All right. Okay, so speaking of Andy Signore, this isn't actually an Andy Signore thing, but it makes me really want a documentary about Andy Signore. Glitch, The Rise and Fall of Trivia HQ. Dragon, how charismatic is that host?
That's pretty charismatic.
I fell in love with him as an interview subject. I really did. So this honestly I really loved this documentary. I really, really liked it a lot. The weird thing is this whole Trivia HQ thing, like clearly a very popular thing, but it very much passed me by. Like I hadn't even heard of it until this point. But the really fun thing about this was kind of like tracking that, that initial excitement as more and more people are getting into it. It's starting with like having the humble roots of like maybe a couple dozen people watching live to thousands of people watching live. And, what my favorite element in this whole documentary is, Dragon?
What?
The giant champagne bottle.
Yes, that's great.
The giant champagne bottle just has such a great thematic payoff to it.
I told you the champagne bottle.
But no, I love all the behind the scenes, like the tensions. Scott Radowski kind of like becoming like the face of the game show, even though the creators, like that kind of like that push and pull of him being the person who's most well known, even though the creators clearly put the legwork into actually making it happen. That there's that one moment where the one guy is being interviewed about where he worked with the one of the two co-CEOs, the one who died, and he kind of like took a minute where like you literally see him like, no guys, like this is getting too emotionally intense. I need to stop. Like we need to take a break. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so moments like that are really impactful for me. Like I really dug this. And honestly, Dragon, make no mistake, there is absolutely enough behind the scenes drama from Screen Junkies to make a documentary like this. Like, honestly, the Screen Junkies thing, while they might not have gotten as high stakes as far as like the viewership being in the millions and all that, make no mistake, what happened to Screen Junkies was even more messy and fucking dramatic and just filled with tension than this was. I mean, I really want them to do a Screen Junkies documentary at some point in this style. All right. So, yeah, needless to say, this was definitely kind of a hit for me. All right. Yep, mystery movie.
Are you ready for this?
Oh, boy.
Asteroid City.
Oh, no! Oh, fuck! You hated it.
No. Okay, so I didn't like this as much as Grand Budapest Hotel.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I like it better than Grand Budapest specifically because it's like it's a smaller scale. Like I kind of like my Wes Anderson on the small scale side.
Well, here's the thing. So I think it looks great visually. It's got an A+ cast. I only have one problem with this movie. Honestly, there's one problem.
Okay.
It's the framing device, the whole play thing.
I will tell you that the framing device. It's part of the reason why, to me, like, I get what you're saying on the first watch. On multiple rewatches, I really love the way that they handled the framing device.
I see what he's going for, but still, it's just, I guess what I'm looking at here is that it just feels like we're overcomplicating things repeatedly. Because I think the story that we are telling,
I love Cranston as the narrator, though.
I know, I do love. That's what's frustrating. I love Cranston as kind of a Rod Serling kind of type. I love that. But that's what I'm saying, though. We have TV, and then we have the play, and we have the whole thing. Is it a televised play? What is going? I don't know. It's a whole. So
you see, to me, I kind of thought that the Russian doll framing device of Grand Budapest was a little bit too complicated.
Well, this is what I'm getting at too. So it feels like even in Grand Budapest, it's like, why does Anderson keep doing this stuff?
Right. No, I agree that like I wish that he would kind of go back to a more straightforward approach to a script. But for me, I don't know. Like I saw this thing 3 times in theaters. I'll probably see it multiple times once it hits streaming.
Tiki already hit streaming.
Oh wait, where is it?
Well, it's on Peacock.
Oh, it's on Peacock. Okay, Peacock is just not on my radar. But for me, like I said, like the more I rewatch this movie, the more. Almost to the point where, like, I was on my third watch, I was almost just as, if not more, excited for the documentary parts as I was for the Asteroid City parts. Like, to me, there's just a lot of subtext, like a shit ton of subtext between those two elements of the story. Let me see. Okay, so I got to know what you thought of Steve Carell because I thought his character was hysterical.
Well, I don't know, hysterical. I thought it was really nice, though. I thought it was yeah. I don't know. I thought it was nice. He was kind of like this nice motel owner, and he just kind of shows up and he says, "Oh yes, yeah, we're doing this." You know, it just seems has a very pleasant demeanor.
What do you think of the musical number towards the end?
I mean, it's okay. I don't know. I didn't really have like a strong feeling about it, but you know.
Because for me, that moment was like oh my fucking god, I love this movie moment for me, honestly. Okay. Especially the payoff with all the parents watching on the TV at the end. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a very personal movie for me, so I totally see how it's not quite on your wavelength, but you enjoyed it though, right?
That's the thing. I enjoyed it. It's just I think the framing device has kind of got in the way of the enjoyment at times for me. Where it's like, I mean, this is good, but it just feels like why does he keep gumming up the works? Like he's telling a really nice story here, and he's just he's throwing artsy stuff at me here. And look, I got nothing against artsy stuff, but I don't want it to get in the way of like Like for example, I love Tom Hanks's role, and
I was going to say Tom Hanks is great in this. Yeah,
so I love Tom Hanks's role, and this is what I like with Wes Anderson's work. I like they have these great actors having these really human moments, despite being in this very specific style of performance. You know, like,
sure. It's a real balancing act.
So I really like that. I like all these actors I love working with Wes Anderson. They love showing up, and they I think because they like being able to break from how they usually do things. And seeing him deal with the loss, and like the whole family deal with the loss, and him like trying to kind of like admit I don't like my son-in-law, but I'm there for his kids. Mm-hmm. I like one scene I really did like. I love Matt Dillon as the mechanic.
Yeah. I really like that scene too.
Yeah, we have.
that was one of the biggest laughs in the theater is when he pulls out the tiny wrench.
Yeah, like that.
It's just like, oh, Wes, you and your visual humor.
Yeah. So overall, I mean, I liked it. I enjoyed it, and I think it's per the Wes Anderson kind of vibe. But it's just it's again, I think he's got to streamline things just a little bit, just a hair. It's like it's not by much, just by a hair. Like maybe don't do the Russian doll thing. Maybe don't.
Right.
I love Cranston. I love Cranston showing up. It's like, wait, am I supposed to be here? Like,
I love that. That is such a good moment. If you notice, one of my favorite details in that moment, and actually I'm glad you bring that moment up because it kind of speaks to why I love the framing device, is that you can literally see the framing device affecting the people's performances. Yeah. So Scarlett Johansson has a line after Bryan Cranston shows up, and she slips out of her Southern accent for like just half a line. And it's because her character, the actress playing Midge Campbell, is thrown off by Bryan Cranston being there. And I love the layers of that. So that kind of shit is why I love the framing device. And also stuff like one of the things that stands out is when Augie burns his hand and he actually burns his hand, and Scarlett Johansson's like, oh, wow, you actually did that. Like, for me, it's really fun to kind of piece together like what is part of the play and what's like organically coming out of the performance. I think there's a lot of layers there.
Maybe a rewatch might help kind of enrich some of the, I don't know, maybe.
I mean, but keep in mind, I really studied this thing though. I listened to podcasts and interviews. Like once I had that first watch and I really liked it, I really went deep into it. So you might have to kind of put in a little bit of research into fully appreciating the framing device. All right. Okay, so time for a movie that's not nearly as complicated. Theater Camp. Yeah, this was a mockumentary about a theater camp. Honestly, Dragon, this just was, it's definitely not a deep movie at all. It's only about 80 minutes long, so it goes by in a flash. Its stars, or one of the stars at least, is, why am I fucking blank? Ben Platt, who, of course, Dear Evan Hansen, he totally flopped in. Like, that is like an iconically bad performance. And here he is genuinely really good. Like, I kind of hope that this movie puts him on the map again because I really liked him in this. What's ironic is that he plays a character that's actually Ben Platt's age, which is like late 20s, early 30s, who has a beard, and yet he still looks significantly younger than high schooler Evan Hansen in the Dear Evan Hansen movie. Which I just, that alone just tickles me. But also the other real big standout in this movie, Dragon, you remember me raving about American Vandal?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a co-star in this movie, and it was one of those actors where it's like, this guy looks so fucking familiar, and I cannot place him for the life of me. And it turned out to be the kid from American Vandal, basically the kid who was accused of doing the of spray painting the dicks, who the documentary was basically about trying to clear his name in American Vandal. And that was like, he also just was like a great role. Essentially, it's a story of like, oh no, the leader of the theater camp has gone ill, and her son, who is that guy, is coming in, and he's social media savvy, but he is not like, he is very much like an extrovert kind of bro type of guy, very much like not necessarily someone that you would expect to click with, theater people. But Dragon, I tell you, the charm of this movie, much like the charm of his character in American Vandal, so that's why this was really good casting, is that much like American Vandal, he starts out as just like a dumb frat boy jock, and you think he's going to be just a jerk. But like the more he gets to know the people in the camp and interact with them, like there are some really goddamn heartwarming connections that he makes with these people in this movie. And so essentially the movie becomes a save the theater or save the camp movie, you know, because there's essentially like the financial side of things is like basically the only threat is that there's like a rival camp on the other side of the lake that wants to buy the camp out. And so they have to put on a big extravaganza end of the summer performance and raise enough money to, to fend them off. So it's a very loose plot, very enjoyable, very breezy. If you're not a theater guy, I don't know how much you'd get out of it. But since I took drama in high school and then took a little bit of theater in college, I definitely got the world that this movie was set in. I've been in that world. So, yeah, not a deep movie at all, not an artistically complex movie at all, but I love a good mockumentary. I feel like mockumentaries are like one of the least touched subgenres. Like I love a good mockumentary as far as like kind of like how I love a good found footage horror movie. I feel like mockumentaries are just a really wonderful way to do a comedy. Like Sandberg's Pop Star, for example, Dragon, a movie that I will keep raving about until you watch it. Pop Star is fucking amazing, and it's 100% mockumentary. But anyways, yeah. So great use of a great subgenre, good cast, Ben Platt comeback. All around nice things to say about this one. All right. Okay, next up for you.
Yeah, let me tell you about introducing Selma Blair.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a documentary that was put out in 2021, basically about Selma Blair's battle with MS. So I watched this because, well, the Arlene Sorkin thing was on my mind, and I heard about Selma Blair's struggles with MS on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast Inside of You. And I was curious because, I love Selma Blair and the Hellboy movies. I mean, I like doing the Hellboy movies. Obviously I'm there more for Ron Perlman. But the point being, yeah, I tell you, man, it's a real up close and personal look at just how bad and what the heck MS really does to a person. It ain't pretty, It's not. I wouldn't recommend this to you necessarily.
No, this is definitely the kind of movie I'd avoid. Yeah,
I mean, it does. I mean, the good news, it does have.
I could barely even get through the Val Kilmer documentary. Honestly, I know that's not MS, but kind of the same principle.
I think if you can't get through the Val Kilmer, you're not going to be able to get through.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, so
I even had trouble with Life itself. Honestly,
wait, Life is that the
Ebert documentary?
Really, you couldn't get through the Ebert?
I had trouble with it. Oh.
All right. Anyway,
I don't like drawn out medical stuff, Dragon. I just don't.
You think I do? But come on, the Ebert thing was like.
Look, I got through it. I liked it, but I'm just saying I probably wouldn't rewatch it anytime soon because of that.
Just look away or look through your fingers when you see
God.
that. When they're doing the icky throat stuff, just, or the hanging face. Anyway, so. Selma Blair, though, we see her as a mother, which is very touching. Like, she really loves her kid, and that was, I had no idea she was a mother. Let's see, she's really approaching the situation with like her irreverent humor, in the face of really bad stuff happening. Man, I tell you, here's the medical stuff like I had trouble with. She gets a stem cell treatment to combat the MS, which is not as easy a fix as Family Guy might lead you to believe.
God.
I mean, again, when it works, I guess it works.
Wait, was that what they used to make Peter skinny?
No. Take it. That was like that was liposuction.
Oh, okay, got it.
When it's the McStroke episode. That's how he fixes himself.
Mm-hmm.
So, why are we not funding this?
Oh my God.
Anyway, but yeah. So it's a rough road that she gets on. You see her be all swollen and everything after taking the stem cells and everything. It's a nightmare. But it's informed. It's an informed documentary. My heart goes out to her and like other people dealing with MS, like Christine Applegate, for example. She's dealing with MS right now. I can't imagine her struggle. So yeah, it was informative, and it was brought to you by Discovery.
Oh boy! All right.
Yeah, thanks, Zaslav.
God. Okay, so Dragon, I'm gonna go from the last couple catch up movies I've been really glowing about. Let's just take a shit all over this one. Fuck the Pope's Exorcist, Dragon. I hated this. Was so boring. That's the thing. It's like because it's like this was one of those movies where it's like when it was in theaters, I was honestly tempted to go see it. And honestly, as far as the reviews go, it got about as good reviews as like something like Last Voyage of the Demeter got, which is like not great, but there were some people saying it was really good. This thing is so dull. I could barely get through this thing, Dragon. It all it is just Russell Crowe just going around. I mean, as far as actual like scares and horror stuff, it's so weak. I mean, it's like it's one of those horror movies that like tries to focus on the character side of things, but the character isn't even really written that well. I just got next to nothing to say about this one. The pacing is bad. That it's one of those movies that has that issue that we kind of talked about with Notarelli that one time, where it's just like it's way too dark. Like visually, it's way too dark. Like you cannot see what's going on. It's so dark. Yeah, more or less kind of hated it. Honestly, one of the worst movies of the year for me. It was really a struggle to get through. I saw it was on Netflix, so I was like, it's kind of just like a why not sort of thing. But yeah, no, I really hated it. All right. Okay, so tell me about Selena, because the funny thing about Selena is that I remember this being in my parents' VHS collection when I was a kid and never like actually watching it, but I remember seeing it.
Yeah, so a friend of mine adores Selena, and she recommended the movie to me. So I watched it. So Selena basically is it's about this Hispanic singer who is her and her family. They were like a group of Selena and I forget what the rest of the band. It was in Spanish, so I can't really recall how to pronounce it. But essentially, it was Selena and her whole family. It was like a traveling thing. Edward James Olmos plays her father. He's really good. This is apparently one of his favorite roles they ever played. Movie got a lot of basically. It was like one of those things where most likely it was like snubbed at the Oscars, but it was very popular with people. It's from '97. Basically, she was like the Hispanic equivalent to Elvis, practically, or Cher. Like she was like in terms of like a mega star over there. She was a mega star over there, and she basically was going stateside on tour. And that's the thing. Like just as she was about to, she was about to really take the world by storm over here. Like she recorded her first like English album. Some really terrible happened to her. Something very tragic happened, and this is a biopic. Now, of course, with this biopic, it's essentially it's in the uncomfortable biopic space because if I recall, and I believe the way the film details it is, this is one of those things where this is like 2 years after the terrible thing happened. This is very much like we got to strike while the iron's hot. While everyone's remembering the travesty.
Right. Yeah.
So, this is a star-making role. Honestly, the other thing kind of that got me to finally see this is that Selena was mentioned in the Warner Brothers documentaries. I was like,
okay.
it's always been recommended to me. It's like, well, it's even there. And there. So apparently, this movie was a big deal for the Hispanic community because it was like early representation for them in a huge way. Like Jennifer Lopez, because again, Selena was that big. She was their Elvis. Jennifer Lopez plays her flawlessly, from what I understand. She plays the role very good. She plays this super charismatic young singer with a family band. She's cute. She can sing. She can she's very light. She's just a very positive person. No dark side at all, really there at all. It's not like a rise and fall story. It's a rise cut down tragically sort of thing. I only have two issues with this film. I think there are 2 points in this movie that oddly get skipped over, or kind of like we kind of jump from unnecessarily. Or we set up her as a girl and her father trying to get the kids into music for the whole musical band thing, and then we just cut to and they're a band now. It's like, well, maybe we should have seen them like actually learn how to sing, perhaps, or because that's like she just kind of ends up talented. We kind of skip past that. Now, the more problematic thing is again the tragedy of her story. We really bypassed. I don't know how much that's like a recency thing or not. See, apparently in 2020 they did a series versions, which I have not seen. Now I don't know how they approached the story there, but at least right now in this movie, when this is very fresh from when it happened, I'm getting the sense they wanted to try not to glorify it, so we don't want to show the tragedy happen. But given the movie is ultimately a lot of build up to that, like okay, we show that her fan base is so numerous and so potentially dangerous and how crazy they could be, given how much they love her, like any fan base. That's the thing. So essentially, I guess you want me to just tell you what happened to her?
Yeah, tell me. I'm kind of curious. Yeah,
Okay, so
morbidly curious, but
that's the thing. So Selena, she was she had a number of fans, and she had like essentially this fan who ran a fan club, essentially, who like was like a boutique owner and everything. And Selena was very nice to her fans. So she basically helped invest money into like her running these boutiques and everything. So she was like a really close friend of the fan and everything. And she was like in charge of like mailing out pictures, autograph pictures, and records and everything to people and that sort of stuff. And she was embezzling money from her. She
oh
basically
shit.
but what happened was Selena and her father. Her father was like a real brass tacks kind of guy, Edward James Olmos. I mean, after all, he they confronted her about it, and Selena was very hurt by this. And basically, she said, "I'll explain everything. I'll get everything to you." So what happened? She shot her.
Oh fucking hell!
The fan, the crazed fan, the
Wow,
crazed fan who was embezzling, shot Selena and killed her.
that's nuts.
As out of the blue, and that's the thing. The movie, the thing that bothers me, and now I got to look into, is that the movie never explains how the heck that happened.
Like, legitimately, you could make a whole fucking movie just based on that.
I know that's the thing.
Just based on like that relationship.
So the movie essentially is building.
Like, fuck all the backstory about
I
how
know,
she
I know.
actually became a singer and everything. That is the story.
I concur. Now I suspect, and I haven't seen it yet. I suspect that show probably does that, but so I can't say one. But it feels like they're
That is
going.
seriously like some Mark. It's like if Mark David Chapman was like actually interacting with John Lennon.
Yeah, that's the thing. That there are a lot of John Lennon comparisons to what happened with Selena in real life, which is very basically it's kind of Elvis meets John Lennon. It's kind of the idea, like someone as big as Elvis, but as a solo act.
Sure.
Is it John Lennon or a solo act would be very similar. Anyway, yeah. So that's the thing. I just feel
John Lennon, like, he was technically a solo act in the 70s. He put out some good stuff, but really, I think even the man himself would say in the 70s he was a political activist more than anything else.
Yeah, that's the thing. So, okay, the point being, it feels like we kind of glazed over what the heck happened to escalate to go from like we set up like okay, there's some tension here, and then cut to she sings in like an artsy way, and then cut to the tragedy happens. She's dying, and the news is like going crazy about like Selena's been shot, and then like the lady, like the fan is like holding like a gun to her head, and I don't even know if she killed herself or she got arrested or not. It's a thing.
Oh my god! Like, wow, that sounds really sloppy.
I know, but again, I have to imagine that's because of the whole recency thing. Like they didn't want to glorify or say like, no, we won't glorify it. It happened. It was more about.
You know that Jared Leto played Mark David Chapman?
Wait, really?
Yes, I'm not fucking kidding you.
I buy it.
Because he's a fucking creep.
I wasn't going to be that blunt about it, but yes, Tiki, yes.
All right.
Old creepy long hair.
Yep. Apparently he gained a ton of weight for it.
Yep.
Which it's like, sure, if you want to throw off your
that's the fat guy That's the fat guy movie with him?
Yeah.
That's who he's playing. That's the fat guy.
Yeah.
Because I always see this picture of Jared Leto as this fat guy in some biopic, but I never found out what it was. So that's
David Chapman. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
All right. I've heard that movie is like very exploitative. Anyways, I've not actually watched it myself.
Jared and the Fat Man.
Yes. Okay, let me tell you about The Ritual. So this ended up being one of two kind of like Norwegian folklore horror movies that I saw this month, interestingly enough. This one was definitely the weaker of the two for sure. I liked it. essentially the premise. It's got a really good intro where it's like a group of buddies who are all kind of like, you know, they're in their like late 30s, early 40s, and they're kind of in that transitioning space where they sort of acknowledge that the days of like hanging out together all the time and going on vacations and stuff is over. Like they're starting families and stuff, but they want to go on one last vacation together. And one of the guys pitches hiking through Sweden. And then in the opening scene, that same guy who pitches that ends up getting randomly killed in an armed robbery incident in a liquor store. And it's a really good opening, actually, where it's like it quickly establishes the friendship. It establishes them going into the liquor store. The actual holdup is very intense, and it's shot in a way that's really realistic, where the whole thing goes down before you really even realize what's happening. Fortunately, that's kind of the high point of the movie, and then after that, I honestly think I'd like this movie a little bit more if I watched it again. And also, I feel like this movie kind of suffers from the thing with horror movies now that a lot of horror movies do, even something that I really like Talk to Me, is kind of like exploring trauma through horror. And so basically the lead character was in the liquor store with a friend who got shot, and he was cowering in the corner, and he basically hid as his friend was killed. And so he has a lot of guilt about that. There's some tension in the group with that. You know, it's like you can tell like the group's not really saying it outright, but they all kind of blame him for what happened. And that's all kind of interesting. But what isn't interesting is when the movie does the same fucking thing for the fourth time in a row, where this lead character falls asleep and, ooh, he's back in the liquor store. He's back in the liquor store again. He's confronting his demons. Ooh. And Dragon, I tell you, it just gets really repetitive. And if the movie just didn't double down on that so much, I think I'd like it a lot more. Because there is some genuinely really creepy stuff in this movie. There's a moment early on, essentially it's basically a Blair Witch Project style movie where it's a Lost in the Woods horror movie. Blair Witch does it a hell of a lot better. But early on, they find a cabin in the middle of the woods where essentially they take a shortcut to try and get to the lodge quicker, but taking the shortcut is what ends up getting them lost. So that's kind of the setup. So they end up in this cabin that's very clearly like an occult cabin. Like there's weird markings on the wall. There's this weird like shrine thing in the attic. And so they spend the night in this cabin because it's like storming outside. And then they all wake up with like terrifying nightmares. And this is like the first time that we see that liquor store thing that I was talking about. The really effective thing is that you see the liquor store, but you don't see what the others are dreaming about, but you see their reactions as they're dreaming. Like the lead character is the first one to wake up, and he has to snap everyone else out of it. And they are like, the acting on it is genuinely like really, really powerful. Like, you know, just them, like they really give it their all. Like it's kind of like that power of imagination in horror movies where, because you don't know what they're dreaming about, it makes it even more intense. But you know what the actual monster is in this movie, Dragon, that does eventually stalk them?
What?
It's literally a child of Loki. Like the Norse god Loki.
Huh.
And so the movie kind of falls apart in that regard for me. There's a cult that comes into it about towards the third act. And like I said, it all kind of comes down to like a big metaphor for like, okay, the main character's the last person left standing, and he has to confront the child of Loki, who's basically like presented as like a big troll creature. And so it's like this whole big metaphor for like, okay, like he had a chance to confront the people in the liquor store, and now he's going to confront the monster. And Dragon, that whole thing was done in such a heavy-handed way. And honestly, I'm kind of getting to the point where, as much as I do like art house horror, I think art house horror is relying on this trope of like people's trauma is the monster way too much. And this was an example of it just not really working well for me. So again, the sequence in the cabin where everyone's having their own individual nightmares, that is like that and the initial like gas station murder that was like played in a very coldly realistic way. Definitely the two high points, but through large spots of this movie, it's just kind of people walking around the woods and it's not as compelling as Blair Witch. So overall, I really didn't care that much for this. It was okay. Like, I don't think it's bad. But again, it kind of plays into some of the tropes that I'm noticing in modern art house horror that I'm not really liking. So yeah, overall, probably about a 6 out of 10. All right, so you've been on a Ghibli binge recently.
Yeah, I've been trying to get them in. Yeah.
All right, so tell me about Castle in the Sky.
Yeah, it's a castle in the sky. I mean, Miyazaki and his castles, man.
I have seen this one, yeah.
Yeah. But as I'm saying, Miyazaki's got this thing for castles. Yes, apparently, Castle in the Sky. Apparently, technically, it's the first Ghibli movie, which I think is why I wanted to kind of start here because it's it's like the first one with the actual studio name.
I mean, honestly, it's got like a ton of the Ghibli tropes. It really does.
It does.
Like a primer.
That's what I'm saying. Like, Nausicaa is something he's just getting out of his system, and then have, yeah, that's things. Nausicaa is him really getting out of his system.
It's got the sassy witch pirate lady.
Mm-hmm. With Dola, yeah.
That kind of character kind of becomes a trademark of Miyazaki movies.
Yeah, so the thing, we're seeing a lot of the beginnings of the Miyazaki stuff here that's going to become a regular recurring in the Ghibli film. So this is, I think, I enjoy this a lot better than I did Nausicaa.
Mm-hmm.
I love Pazu and then Ashita, their friendship, and I love the whole I love like this girl just drops in his lap and he's helping the girl, and it's very straightforward. It's they have some exciting chases. Again, we have the Miyazaki stamps like the air pirates, the Pirates of the Sky, which is like a runner for them apparently. Because I'm the first thing I thought it was Porco Rosso.
Oh, the pirates in this movie are almost indistinguishable from the ones in Porco Rosso. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing.
They might as well just be the same characters.
Well, I mean, they're a little more rough and tumble, and they're more summer. Look this way, they're more dressed for summer in Porco Rosso. That's the one difference.
Right.
But yeah, so Mark Hamill's amazing in this movie.
He is, isn't he? It's
so
one of the best Mark Hamill like non-Joker voiceover roles.
That's
I think.
I just Mark Hamill is so underrated when people always like, oh, Joker, Luke Skywalker. Guys, he's so much
Exactly
good.
right.
Put him in. First of all, put him in live action because he never gets enough live action work. But still, put him in both.
He's in that Burt Kreischer movie, right?
I know. Tiki, I really, I told you about that story.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I'll definitely check that movie out once.
I definitely want to see the movie, but I'm waiting for it to stream. That's the problem. Otherwise, I would have watched it. But again, he's great as Muska is like basically the guy going after the stone. Yeah, it's admittedly the only gripe I have is like there's that one creepy thing it's in a lot of the Miyazaki stuff with the pirates is that the pirates have a thing for underage girls. It's kind of
I feel like that's less of a Miyazaki thing and more just a Japanese thing.
I think so. I know. I think it is a
whole Japanese schoolgirl thing.
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Like it's a little weird when we get the dub, but it's like all these grown pirates are trying like I love that. I love you, Shita. It's like.
Wait, she's literally a Catholic schoolgirl? Yeah. With the uniform and everything?
God.
Oh, anyway. God bless Stacy Pilgrim.
Anyway. But yeah, it's I thought it feels like still an early effort because like Nausicaa, the one thing it does Nausicaa as a plot that I can't really follow. It's all visual by the end of that. So this, however, I feel I can follow the plot, but I do feel it's like a little, still maybe a touch vague in the plot part, but it's fine. At least I know overall what's going on. I can track. I don't know why the stone's doing certain things, but I get what the stone's doing. like, sorry, it's not even the stone. It's just the whole Lapida. The whole like what the deal with Lapida is. It basically essentially it's a flying castle that Muska is trying to harness into like a weapon to take over the world. Presumably, that's essentially what it is. That makes sense. I can track that. That's fine. I don't need to know necessarily all the lore with the place, but it would have been bad. So it still feels like an early effort, but a good early. It's like it's a promising early effort. So
For sure.
I had a good time with it.
All right, so Dragon.
Yeah.
How would you like to watch a movie that's literally 80 minutes of Brian Cox and Emile Hirsch dissecting a body?
No, thank you.
All right. Well, you are not going to like the Autopsy of Jane Doe then. So this was actually done by the same director who did Last Voyage of the Demeter and also Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So I kind of went on a little bit of a binge of his work. There's still one more movie of his I have to see that I didn't get around to, but it was yet another like Norwegian dark fairy tale, and I was like, nah, I've had enough Norwegian stuff for 1 month. But this was his first American movie, or English language movie at least. Brian Cox and Emile Hirsch play father and son morticians. And they have a body that they have to dissect. And let's just say, Dragon, some really medically not right things are happening with this body. And honestly, when the movie is about like, what the fuck? Why is there a piece of cloth totally intact with markings on it in this woman's stomach with like a single tooth that is missing from her mouth? Like when it's that kind of stuff, it's really, really interesting. And I'm really into it. Unfortunately, this movie fucking plays into that trope I was just talking about. It's yet another, like, we're going to confront our trauma through the guise of a horror villain. This body basically becomes the personification of Brian Cox's dead wife. And there's this weird, like, religious thing where it's, oh my god, this movie goes super off the rails, Dragon. It goes super off the rails. I understand if this is your thing, but for me, like, there's definitely some really interesting stuff going on here. Like the body is very much kind of like a character because you can tell it's manipulating a lot of stuff. Like, for example, it's manipulating the radio. The radio is saying things about a story. Like, basically, the body is essentially like conjuring all this shit that's going down. And then at the end of the movie, you don't really know what was real, what was in their head, what the body actually did. But like I said, at a certain point, they get into like a whole religious explanation for what's going on that just makes it really, really, really convoluted. But again, the whole crux of it is like Brian Cox has to get over the death of his wife, and essentially that turns out to be the monster. So I'm sick of that trope. I'm so sick of that trope. It worked well in Talk to Me just because the writing of that character was really well done. And Talk to Me had more stuff going on with the scares than just that. But God, I'm sick of the trope. Okay, so Richard's Victims, he says, I'm done with trauma-based horror. Can it just be about a creepy supernatural body? Yeah, exactly. There's no reason why we have to get into Brian Cox's whole backstory. I will say, though, that Brian Cox was fantastic, and Emile Hirsch isn't even really in that much anymore, and so it was great to see him again. It was fun to see Brian Cox, like, post-X-Men, but pre-Succession. We need more horror that is just about the creeps. Richard's Victims, have you seen the horror movie on Netflix that's literally just called Creep? Because if not, I would very much recommend it. Anyways. So yeah, this was a frustrating one for me, for sure. Like, I thought I would like it more than I ended up liking it. Okay, I'm also going to shout out a couple more Richard's Victims things. The fun of Miyazaki is that the plots are wacky. Like, Ponyo is literally a fish that turns into a little girl who loves ham. and can make babies happy by pushing her face into the baby, and the parents don't stop her because that's normal. Ponyo is weird. Yeah, it is. It's found footage. Yeah, Richard's Victims. Have you seen it? It's honestly like it's like one of my. It's on my Mount Rushmore of found footage horror movies. Honestly. Let's see. Oh, I also missed this when I was talking about Last Voyage of the Demeter. Kogias was like, I think that every vampire film from now on needs at least one Morbius reference. God. Okay, so yeah, again, seen both of them, loved them. I liked the second one. I just think that the first one was just such a, I mean, that thing just, that first movie just kicked my ass, man. Richard's Victims, you know what I love about the first movie? I love how the first movie, it is, to me, the horror movie that most well-utilized jump scares. Because that fucker actually had jump scares as, like, part of his psychological torture arsenal. And I love that about that movie. Anyways, okay. All right, Dragon, what's up? One last one, but it's a biggie, though.
The French Connection.
So this is very much one of those, like, movies that you really should have seen by now, and I should have seen by now.
Yeah, I literally had the DVD and everything, and I meant to watch it. It's just they kind of kept getting away from me, and I felt bad that Freakin' died, and I didn't see it. So yeah, so he is one of the movies that he directed.
I think it's probably like definitely the second most famous Freakin' movie after The Exorcist.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, it's this stars Gene Hackman and Roy Scheider as Pi Doyle and Cloud. Yeah, it's basically long story short, it's two New York cops trying to bust this French drug deal. And it was one of the Albuquerque verse inspirations, particularly for. Do you remember? Okay, you remember the scene in Better Call Saul where Mike tears the car apart?
Yeah, as you know, that was kind of like one of the moments of Better Call Saul where it's like, okay, this is cool, but it's kind of taken up too much of the episode.
Well, essentially, that was their love letter to this movie. So,
okay, got
oddly, it. There are two Gene Hackman movies where this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought that was a reference to the.
The Conversation.
Yeah, The Conversation.
Well, that's the thing. It's kind of a dual reference because here's the thing: the car specifically is the French Connection in terms of like it's a little bit of both because Gene Hackman does the same thing in two movies, oddly enough. In The Conversation, he tears apart a room. In The Conversation, he tears apart a room.
Gene Hackman was just fucking typecast as like a government conspiracy theorist.
I mean, basically more like a guy who likes tearing things apart. But yeah, he's James Dean's worst nightmare. You're tearing me apart. Anyway, but
okay, that's like a robot chicken cutaway that we need, Dragon. Just Gene Hackman literally dissecting James Dean.
Yep, apparently in a remake.
You're tearing me apart, Gene. You're literally tearing me apart.
Like, shut up! I'm trying to get in there.
And of course, you know that they throw in a Tommy Wiseau gag too.
Yep.
Why aren't you tearing me apart, Gene?
You'll get your
turn. Gene?
Anyway, but yeah, part of me is this is gonna be a dumb thought. This occurred to me. I wonder because they must have loved Gene Hackman. You gotta wonder when they come up with the name Gene Takovic. Is Gene?
Oh, it's got to be Gene Hackman. It's got to be. I always just kind of assume that. Yeah.
You know what it must be too is given the fact that Gene has a mustache. In The Conversation, he has a mustache. It's Gene Hackman with a mustache and glasses.
I mean, when I think of Gene Hackman, I usually picture him with a mustache.
Honestly. It's so weird because when they were making the first Superman movie, Richard Donner had to trick Gene Hackman into shaving his mustache because he wanted to go Lex with a mustache because that was his iconic look for so many years.
Right. And then also his one of his last really big, well-known mainstream roles was. I'm saying he did stuff after this, but this was one of his last iconic roles. Was Royal Tenenbaum and very prominent mustache there.
Right, so that's the thing. So he was for many years he was known as having a mustache, but Donner tricked him like because he already knew he was going to put a bald cap on for like because he wouldn't shave his head, but he basically said like, "But I'm not shaving the mustache." Well, so Donner had a fake mustache put on to say, "Look, if you shave your mustache, I'll shave mine."
Oh,
And
jeez.
he walked the set after Gene Hagen had shaved the mustache. I thought you shave your mustache, and he just removed it right there. And Gene Hagen had a big old laugh. Anyway, point being, yeah. So in both movies, the conversation is tearing a room apart to look for a listening device, and in the French Connection, he's literally tearing apart a car apart, looking for a secret compartment where drugs are kept.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's really it's brilliant. So again, there's a lot of Albuquerque verse inspirations there, in the sense you can see Gilligan has good taste in movies. Freaking has excellent cinematography in this. It's very good, and this is per like seven. I think it came out in 71. I think. It's got a very famous car chase in it. Well, I mean, car chase in the loose sense. The car is more so chasing a subway train, like an elevated subway platform in New York. But yeah, it's a very. I don't know if it's the first time they ever attached like the camera to the front of the car or not, because that was like the iconic thing about it. But it was before we get like stuff like Bullet. But yeah, I love the duo in this film. I love Scheider and Hackman working together. I keep saying this, and especially this movie, because I always saw clips of this movie. I still say Roy Scheider when they were making Batman '89. Had they cast Roy Scheider as Commissioner Gordon, it would have been amazing.
Sure.
I still say, oh god, it would have been perfect. Let's see the subway. Oh, the subway sequence is great. That feels very full on Albuquerque verse, where basically Gene Hackman is Pi Doyle. He's staking out the Frenchman. They call him Frog 1 and Frog 2. So he's staking out the frog. And the frog keeps getting on and off like the train. He keeps having to find like sly reasons, almost like Mike Ehrmantraut, to get on and off the subway train. Eventually, gets away from it. It's a really great sequence. Anyway, ends very darkly. I will say this. The only issue I have with the movie is I think Act 1. It sets things up, but because the sections that are set in France before we go to Brooklyn, because initially making the connection, like the literal French connection between what do these two things have to do with each other, it's a bit of a slow burn. But it's all Act 3 though is gangbusters. Act 3 is like, oh my, everything's just we're cooking with gas now. It's wonderful.
I mean, that sounds like Albuquerque verse storytelling.
Yeah, there exactly. So it's definitely worth a watch, Tiki. Yeah, But it's very well directed. I mean, like when the scene where they test the purity of the drugs, you can absolutely see where they got it for the Albuquerque verse. It's wonderful.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and not speed round these two because honestly, I really like both these movies, but I'll try and go through them as fast as we can because we're already past the 3-hour mark here. And we thought this would be one of the shorter ones of these, Dragon.
So many people kept dying.
Oh God, Jesus. Okay, so Troll Hunter, and no, not the Netflix series Troll Hunters. I hope that you realize that this movie was not.
Well, yeah, I said 2010, so I was pretty sure.
Okay, so this is yet again another one from the director of Last Voyage of the Demeter, and I can absolutely tell that this is the movie that got this guy scary stories to tell in the dark. Because this movie, let me just say right now, oh, excuse me. I think this movie feels more like a story out of the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark books than anything in the actual Scary Stories movie does. And so I can absolutely see how they would get that guy for that project. So this is another found footage horror movie, but I'm not going to say it's like elite, but it's a really good one. Essentially, the main characters are kind of like wannabe journalists. They kind of fancy themselves Michael Moore, where it's like they're like, oh, Michael Moore didn't give up on after being denied one interview. So essentially it starts out where they're trying to track down a poacher in the Norwegian wilderness, or at least who they think is a poacher, and kind of, basically do like an expose on him, because someone's been killing bears in the Swedish forest. Yes, this is also the Swedish, or yeah, Norwegian forest. Norway is Norwegian. I think it's Norway. Anyways, so the movie starts out where it's like they're talking to a group of hunters, like licensed bear hunters. It's a very small knit community, and there's one person who is kind of like in their territory who they do not trust. It's this hermit like guy that runs around with an RV that has very suspicious scratch marks on it. The RV smells like straight piss. So it's like this guy does not have a good reputation, and the documentary crew is like, okay, there's something about this guy. We have to like track him down essentially and get his story, because regardless of or not if he's a good person or not, or if he's a poacher, there is definitely an interesting story here. And it turns out, yeah, they were right. There is very much an interesting story attached to this guy. Because he is the world's one and only troll hunter, because it turns out that Norwegian mythical trolls actually exist. And Dragon, this is the important part. They are fucking terrifying. All the destructive qualities that you could picture an actual troll having if it was a real thing in the real world, this movie fucking showcases. I love the world building in this movie. The troll hunter guy, he has this giant kind of like almost bat signal style searchlight that causes artificial sunlight, and when he blasts it at trolls, they will either turn to stone if they're older trolls, or just explode if they're younger trolls. There is a scientific explanation that they go into about why that is, and it's really cool. The reason why his van smells like piss is because it's literally covered in troll piss that he has collected over the years to kind of like camouflage his scent. There's just a lot of really cool real building moments like that. Like you can tell that this was a story that the director was very thoughtfully kind of mapping out in his head. There is one moment in particular that is not going to leave my mind anytime soon. It was fucking terrifying, where they venture into a troll cave, right? And like, because they do a test where it's like, okay, nobody's home. And so they go into a troll cave, but then no, Dragon. Like, I swear, okay, Dragon, you know how I've talked about like how I get creeped out at the idea of being overpowered by a large number of something smaller than me?
I'm thinking like huge like spiders and huge like carnivorous plants, not so much the little things.
But I've mentioned that before, right?
I don't think you have.
Like
I think
birds, I think I've mentioned that with birds.
I guess maybe once with the birds.
Okay, well, you get the principle, right?
Yeah,
like,
I get the
idea of like I'm surrounded by something smaller than me, and they have the strength in numbers, and they are going to fucking tear me apart.
Mm-hmm.
Well, apply that principle, except apply it to fucking giant trolls. Because, like, I swear to God, like 5 or 6 or 7 trolls come into this cave while they are in the cave. And so they have to just hide out in this corner. And Dragon, oh my God, it is one of the most suspenseful things I have ever seen in my life. I mean, just the way, just the sheer number of them is just, it's terrifying. So yeah, I also really like the fact that there's all kinds of different trolls. It builds up to essentially a kaiju troll at the end, which is like the main boss, essentially. Like I said, there's like a distinction between really old trolls and younger trolls. It's just a really, really well thought out, especially for like an hour, 40-minute movie. There's like a lot of lore and a lot of world building, and I will say that the actual documentary crew is, honestly, they're barely characters. They're just kind of there to have the found footage quality. But the actual troll hunter himself is a very compelling character, so that kind of makes up for that. Um, yeah, Richard's victims. Yeah, he says he has it with the idea of rats that a swarm of them can just eat you alive. That is just so creepy to me. Ooh, yeah, I hear you on that. So yeah, Troll Hunter, very, very effective movie for me. I did not think that a movie about literal trolls, like fantasy trolls, could scare me as much as that damn cave sequence did, but it got under my skin. And finally, at the end of it all, Dragon, we have Mean Girls. Have you seen Mean Girls?
No, actually.
Okay. So this is one of those movies where I have a friend who's been telling me to watch it for a while. And it's one of those movies where it's like it's kind of like in that sort of like Office Space realm of like, I worry that I've heard so much about it. I've heard it quoted so much. And I worry that if I do finally get around to watching it, that it's just not going to live up to the hype. Dragon, this movie lived up to the hype. Like, this is like a god tier comedy. I really love this. I think that all the performances are really spot on. The character work was just wonderful. Essentially, the premise is that Lindsay Lohan, Lindsay Lohan is essentially playing a teenage Eliza Thornberry. I'm not even kidding. Because the whole idea with her character is that she was homeschooled in Africa until her junior year of high school. And then her parents throw her into an actual public high school. And so kind of like, kind of shenanigans from there. But Dragon, if you've ever heard the term the plastics, that's where this movie is where that comes from. Because essentially Lindsay Lohan is torn between her initial group of friends, which is like the gay kid and the goth girl, who kind of befriend her as a fellow, like, really quirky person at the school. And then essentially the goth girl is like, hey, you should go and mess with the plastics, and essentially like infiltrate them because, you are good looking. You've got the qualities of a plastic, but you just don't have the personality of a plastic, essentially. And so the whole movie is basically like Lindsay Lohan at first, kind of like leading that double life of basically like she just joins the plastics just to kind of like gossip to her friends about them and how ridiculous they are. But then she gets sucked into them, man, and there's a lot of drama that happens. And Rachel McAdams is Regina George. Utterly iconic screen villain. Utterly iconic screen villain. Just such a great, great mean girl archetype, really. But yeah, this is one of those movies where it's got a ton of characters and every one of them really pops. Ton of quotable lines, ton of memorable moments, and it all just holds up so well. It's so well directed. It's so well paced. The editing is on point. It's extremely quotable. It's just all around just such a fucking likable movie, and I can see how it's a classic. Came out in 2004, and I genuinely think that we should probably do a 20th anniversary on it next year. Don't want to make any promises on that as far as like you being involved, but like I would like to do it because I truly think it is like a classic at this point, and it is one of those classics that absolutely holds up. All right, and we're done. Oh my god. Best and worst, Dragon.
All right, worst Vacation Friends 2.
Not surprised.
Best, I mean, it's a tough call because I mean, I really did enjoy that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mayhem movie, but I think I have to give it to the French Connection because also there's Castle in the Sky, but it's kind of a three-way tie. I think I might just have to say the French Connection.
That's fair. Mine is actually really easy. I would say best, as much as I did like a lot of the other movies this year, or this month, I should say, Mean Girls really does stand out as like, it is a classic for a reason, and I'm glad I finally checked it off my list. Worst, unquestionably, The Pope's Exorcist. I'm genuinely surprised I even got through that thing. All right, Dragon, next month, September, there is genuinely like not a lot. Like the whole the dumb money thing is just about it. So all right, so we need to wrap up, Dragon. So Let's see. Big thanks to Richard's victims as well as Code Geass in the comments. Appreciate you guys as usual.
Also, Chair Reacts.
What?
We had someone named Chair Reacts too, and Claude. Tiki Card.
Oh yeah, Claude was in there. Cherry. Huh. Okay, I totally missed that. Yeah, it's more fun than. Oh yeah, okay. I do not know who that is. I'm sorry.
How dare you shun Claude again?
I know. Well, he's just saying protect Mark Hamill. Honestly, I didn't want to read that comment just because I didn't want to jinx it. Honestly.
Well, still, no. I just mean like in general, you got to thank Claude at the end there, man. You know.
Of course, yeah. Okay. Well, folks, we've waxed on long enough, and now it's time to put the pen down. Until next time, when we return for another fitting chapter in our Memoirs. Stop doing trauma as horror. It's an outdone trope.